Hello and welcome to 6 Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Deku Had a Mecha Quirk Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Like drooling, knuckle-dragging chimpanzees, extras swarmed around the school entrance, staring up at the green-haired silhouette at the edge of the roof. Katsuki scowled at the backs of everyone's heads as he observed from a distance. "Don't do it," a child exclaimed in jest. "You have so much to live for." "Do a flip," said another. Katsuki gave them a sneer. Ignorant of the threat that thing posed to them all, they shouted and pointed carelessly. Their hospitals, cars, and microwaves were all operated by machines that deceived people into depending on them. They were just going to cut the power and watch as everyone drowned in their own foolishness. Katsuki snarled, squirted nitroglycerin, and swore he would never allow it to occur. He would emerge as the most popular hero and reveal Deku's true nature. A teacher went outside to observe the source of the disturbance after observing that the pupils had not fled like frightened rats. "Midoriya, please come down. It's not safe up there." "Understood." Deku returned the call. Deku leapt. As the teacher scurried aside, Katsuki laughed. As each student competed for the best view of their falling classmate, phones were being waved around. Deku struck the ground in a kneeling position, accompanied by a loud crack and the screech of twisted metal. Around him, concrete buckled and cracked in a circle. While Deku stood and brushed himself off, the pointless extras oohed and awed. He landed on a knee that would not fully straighten. "Oh God, Midoriya, would you like me to drive you to the hospital?" the teacher exclaimed as she hurried over after noticing this. "No need," said Deku. "This will be simple to repair." Katsuki shouldered past the extras while Deku sat down and pushed back his jeans. Deku had a blade sticking out of his finger. He peeled it back after sliding it through his skin. Wire coils wound around gleaming steel beams underneath. He had a knotted kneecap that gleamed from the oil. Bright red fluid, a pale mimic of blood, was contained by a transparent membrane. "See!" exclaimed Katsuki. "Nothing but metal and wires inside." "Duh, it's his quirk." "It's not a quirk. That's the lie made up to trick you all into thinking it's human." "Shut up already. I want to see this." Another finger's plasma beam burned like butter through the twisted metal. After extracting the lump and putting it in his mouth, Deku swallowed and fused his leg shut. Deku put his new knee to the test a short while later. The teacher reminded everyone that class was over and forced them to leave as everyone gathered around Deku, asking him a ton of questions about his quirk. As the teacher fussed over his previously broken leg and promised that one day he would make them all see the truth, Bakugo glared back at Deku. They would all discover that Deku was a robot eventually. As his buff form disappeared in a cloud of steam, Toshinori complained to himself. He had lost his grip on the slime villain. Toshinori was still able to use a phone despite his scrawniness, and he knew roughly where to look. He found his target by following the thunderous booms. A teenager was trapped in the viscous, eye-shaped ball of slime. The villain pushed itself into the child's mouth while he threw explosions everywhere. The scene's heroes remained behind and controlled the crowd. Backdraft had raging fires to control, Mount Lady couldn't fit in the narrow alleyway, and Kamui Woods would light up like kindling. Toshinori turned away, hoping that a better hero would come along soon. The crowd's shouts caused him to turn around. Despite the hero's cries to remain outside, another child marched past Death Arm's barricade. As the child approached him and punched his gelatinous body, the slime villain chuckled. The child took a step back when he realized that his punches had no effect on the villain and that the victim's mouth had only been temporarily relieved by scraping slime off it. Instead of giving up, as Toshinori had assumed, the child sucked a handful of slime into his mouth. The audience fell silent. The bad guys stared at him. Even the victim gave up trying to look at the crazy kid with wide eyes. According to the villain, "You know what? Fine, if you want to taste that badly, have some more." The villain plunged into the mouth of the other child after tossing aside his first victim. The villain was inside in a matter of seconds. Fear gripping his stomach, Toshinori forced his way to the front of the crowd, but the child appeared unfazed by the villain now living inside of him. Death Arms walked warily toward the child. You all right, kid?" The child gave him a blink. "Yes, I am. Thank you for asking." A thermos was held out by Death Arms. "Any chance you could spit out that villain?" "I can only digest what I eat. I'm not physically capable of spitting out anything I swallow," the child said, tilting his head. "Huh!" the child exclaimed, echoing the villain's muffled voice. I'm immune to stomach acid. I don't have stomach acid, it would melt through my body. Fire. Why are you filled with fire, you crazy kid? Screamed the villain, who then bubbled out. With a screw, Death Arms closed the thermos after scooping the steaming villain inside. Toshinori grinned to himself as the hero congratulated the child. The child had rushed into peril and risked his life to save another. His successor was already capable of managing his quirk. Toshinori smiled at the idea of stroking his new successor in Night Eye's face as he escorted the child out of the crowd. That would prove to him that he was not a moron. After a single exchange, Izuku consumed a golden hair, and the quirk it contained disappeared in a cloud of smoke. As Toshinori drove up to Dagoba Beach, he felt his head spinning. Overnight, Izuku's biceps had grown 2 inches. His mother was aware of One for All and his injury, and worst of all, he was clueless about how to instruct his new apprentice. Considering teaching at UA sent a chill down his spine in the spring. No one ventured near the beach's foul stench, and heaps of trash littered the sand. It was the ideal location for Izuku to unleash One for All. Toshinori held his nose and said, "All right. Try punching that refrigerator over there as hard as you can." Izuku delivered a blow. Halfway across the beach, the refrigerator's sword and metal squealed. Telling him how to use his new quirk was a waste of time. Thinking that teaching might be simpler than he had anticipated, Toshinori grinned. "Nice punch. Doesn't look like we'll have to work on your strength, so let's work on building your character. We're going to clear all the trash on this beach." Izuku glanced around and said, "Understood." He approached a rusted car that had 3 tires and no front hood. A piece of the side was gouged out by the serrated claws that grew on his fingers. Izuku unhinged his jaw and pushed the whole thing down his throat. Izuku devoured the entire car, and Toshinori watched in silent fascination. Izuku's back skin broke apart. Behind him grew a giant shaft with thick, stumpy legs and long, spindly arms. The new appendages snapped more trash around Izuku as he moved forward, shoving it into his back. Wood and plastic burned inside Izuku, and black smoke blasted out of his mouth. Behind him, the metallic growth extended, branched, and developed more arms to consume trash. As he moved, bits and pieces fell off, which the arms picked up and reconsumed. A crowd was drawn by the smoke. While Izuku rummaged through mountains of trash, people observed and snapped photos. The police showed up in a matter of minutes, but Toshinori prevented them from dragging Izuku away by flashing his agency's card. Soon after the arrival of news reporters, Toshinori put on his best TV face as he babbled about preparing the heroes of the future. Izuku had cleared the beach by the time he concluded the interview. He was followed by a shambling monstrosity the size of a city block, which left All Might speechless. Izuku said, "All done. Where should I put this?" They had driven into a pickup truck, which Toshinori indicated. "I only brought that to take away the trash." Understood. Like a gigantic roly-poly, the appendages coiled up on themselves. The tires flew off the axles and both bumpers struck the pavement when Izuku rolled it into the truck's bed. "What next?" Izuku asked after shifting the weight until the entire mass was resting on the flattened truck. As he put on his hero costume, Toshinori told himself that Izuku had simply misinterpreted him. Toshinori rushed to find alternative training techniques after staking his bet on the beach cleanup taking several months. He resorted to the time-tested strategy of aimlessly wandering in the hopes of finding a good idea somewhere. He was inspired by an elderly woman who was patiently waiting for a crossing signal at a busy intersection. "All right, Midoriya, this will be a nice, simple warm-up. See that old lady there? Help her cross the street." Instructions confirmed. The old woman was lifted onto Izuku's shoulders. The woman only seemed interested in her new perspective, but Toshinori winced at the rough treatment. Izuku ran to the crosswalk and jumped across the street in one bound while traffic was still moving through the intersection. Other pedestrians scrambled out of the way as the concrete gave way under the force of his landing. The woman gave a delighted whoop. "That way," she yelled, gesturing up the street. Across the street, Izuku jumped before Toshinori could stop him. With only half a lung to work with, Toshinori could only watch as Izuku shrank down the street into a green speck as he ran after him. He heard sirens blaring as one police car sped past him, followed by another. Izuku was chased down the road by a whole group of cars, followed by a swarm of news vans. Toshinori discovered a blockade erected around Izuku when he eventually caught up. Izuku was the focus of cameras from half a dozen news organizations. "Put down the old lady and keep your hands in the air," an officer yelled over a loudspeaker. Izuku made an attempt to remove the woman from his shoulders, but he quickly gave up because she was holding on to him and he was unable to drop his hands. When the officer asked Izuku, unable to comply. "You'll never take me alive," exclaimed the old woman. The officers mistakenly believed her voice to be Izuku's and trained their pistols on him because she was a voice actor for several shonen characters. "He's resisting arrest. Take him down." Toshinori rushed in front of the officers, buffed up mid-stride in panic. He was able to persuade the officers not to arrest Izuku after a lengthy phone conversation with Tsukauchi. As she moved away from Izuku's shoulders, the elderly woman smiled broadly. I haven't felt that alive since my husband ran off with some skank. If only I was 50 years younger." Izuku examined her from head to toe. "Indeed, you are alive. Have a nice day." Izuku simply needed some time to get used to his new quirk, Toshinori told himself, pointedly ignoring the cracked sidewalks in their wake as they searched for the next location where Izuku could practice being a hero. While her cat gazed down at her from a tree branch, a young girl sobbed quietly and held a teddy bear. Seeing another classic hero situation, All Might consoled the young girl and braced himself for another challenge to Izuku's bravery. All Might said to Izuku, "We have to get that cat down from the tree. Do not damage the tree, or the cat, or any bystanders, or the street, adjacent buildings, or anything else in the near vicinity. Do not make any noises exceeding 80 decibels or lights bright enough to blind someone. Do not commandeer a military drone, hack into the nearby traffic lights, or eat any power cables. Understand?" Izuku gave a nod. He spent a good 5 minutes looking up at the cat. Sweat was streaming down All Might's face as he awaited catastrophe. "Are you the one that ordered 50 tuna salad sandwiches?" a delivery man asked Izuku, grunting and sweating beneath an overstuffed backpack. Izuku took the sandwiches, shoveled the remaining ones, still wrapped in paper, into his mouth, and scooped the tuna out of one. Izuku held the tuna and reached out until he could touch the cat. Izuku pulled his arm away as the cat, smelling the tuna, clung to his arm and scarfed down the treat. Izuku said, "Cat acquired," to All Might. "How did I do?" All Might looked around the street, anticipating squads of police cars and deteriorating infrastructure. Everything else appeared normal, but everyone had disappeared. He let out a sigh of relief. "Perfect, Midoriya. You did a fine job. At this rate, you'll be ready for the entrance exam in no time." To the cat's chagrin, the young girl squealed with delight and gave it a smothering embrace. After giving himself a pat on the back for a job well done, All Might guided Izuku to the next lesson that caught his attention. One of the cops talked into his radio in a nearby alley. "All units, abort. Midoriya has left the scene without any collateral damage. False alarm." 12 squad cars, a SWAT team, multiple construction crews, 5 insurance agents, 2 tanks, 4 police helicopters, 3 K9 squads, a sniper team, 3 ambulances, 2 fire trucks, a SWAT team, and every local news van within 10 miles all filed out of the alleyway with dissatisfied grousing. Filing into his seat, Katsuki scowled at the extras surrounding him. Deku settled into the seat beside him as he pondered how he would crush them all beneath his feet, demonstrate the power of his quirk to the masses, and bring them all together to fight the robot threat. The weight of it made the seat groan. "Robots can't be heroes, Deku," growled Katsuki. "I'm not a robot." "Oh yeah?" Katsuki asked, observing its more robust and taller frame. "Let me guess, you got another one of those overnight growth spurts?" "It's a part of my quirk," Katsuki scoffed and said, "more like an upgrade." "Hey," a student with spectacles called down. "Please keep it down, you are disturbing everyone else's concentration." "Can it? 4 eyes. Aren't you also disturbing everyone's concentration?" Deku asked, looking up at him. The extra kowtowed to everyone around him as his eyes widened. "He is absolutely right. You all have my deepest apologies." "I know what you're planning, robot. I'm watching you," Katsuki growled at Deku. "How do you know I'm going to replace All Might?" Deku asked, blinking at him. Present Mike approached the podium and exclaimed, "Hey there, listeners. Can I get a big, hey," as Katsuki was processing that bombshell. There was silence in the auditorium. Deku's chest buzzed, and a metallic, "yeah," that had been 3D printed burst from its mouth. "Is this what you asked for?" the robot asked, holding it up. "Not quite the volume one wanted, but very nice," the present Mike said with a feeble laugh. "I see. I could make more, but it would weaken the integrity of my chassis." "No, I don't need any of them." Izuku swallowed the word after chewing it up with deafening crunches. "Oh, okay. All right," awkwardly replied present Mike, For those of you that didn't take a pamphlet, here's how this will work. We'll start with the entrance exam, which I hope you all studied for. After that is the practical exam, where you'll fight robots until time runs out. Katsuki's face broke into a crazy smile. Fuck yeah. Those robots won't know what fucking hit them, he yelled as he jumped out of his chair. Language, roared Four Eyes, and how dare you interrupt a teacher. An extra with spiky red hair remarked, so manly, as she gazed at him in wonder. What he said? Those robots are going down, he exclaimed as he stood up. Present Mike let out a sigh and yelled loud enough to break windows 5 blocks away as the auditorium collapsed into chaos. Tiny drones distributed the tests after the examinees had fallen into a stunned silence. Katsuki, convinced that the robot had ruined his test, glared at it as it placed an exam next to him. He considered taking Deku's test, but he sabotaged it instead after realizing the robots wanted him to steal one. Katsuki wrote, smugly confident that he would outsmart them. Deku finished in 30 seconds, much to his annoyance and to the surprise of everyone else. Start, yelled Present Mike. At first, everyone was confusedly staring at him, but then they heard footsteps. The sound of one taking off sent the others running, like a flock of birds. Iida started his engines and dashed into the city, believing that the farther he went, the more robots he would encounter. The heads of every robot he passed were hunched over. As they went on, the robots continued to stand motionless but showed no signs of damage. Iida yelled, I think there has to be some kind of mistake, in the hopes that someone might hear her. These robots hadn't been turned on. Standing half a mile away, Hizashi yelled, that's where you're wrong, little listener. Another examinee turned those off. Better hurry if you want some points. Izuku backflipped over a robot and flipped the switch on its head as Iida ran to the far side of the city in a panic. After surveying the area, Izuku stated, all targets neutralized. Awaiting further orders. His heart fell, Iida thought. In just a few minutes, one student rendered all of his training and preparation, including turning down his brother's offer of a recommendation, meaningless. There has to be something I can do, Iida said feebly. The ground trembled as though in response to his prayers. A mechanical giant lumbered toward the milling students, causing buildings to collapse and concrete to split open. That's the 0-pointer. We should get out of here, Iida retreated. Izuku remained motionless. With a questioning gaze, he remarked, there's someone trapped in front of it. Iida stopped in her tracks. Gazing at the debris, he could barely spot a cream-colored patch among the gray shards. She'll be fine. This is just a test, after all. The robot's foot went up. Izuku gestured to the giant with his right hand. His fingers contracted into the gap, and his wrist swelled outward. The hollow barrel pulsated with a green sphere. Emerald light exploded from the cannon and struck the robot with a high-pitched whine. Its back was gushing white-hot metal. With a loud crash, the 0-pointer fell backwards, its lights flickering as it shuddered. Iida stared in wonder at the downed robot. That was incredible, truly. I am not deserving of being here if these are the standard students at UA are held to. Through an intercom, Nezu spoke as the dust settled. His voice was punctuated by the occasional giggle, and he sounded manic. I have bad news and good news. Bad news, 3 students destroyed all the robots. Well, except in Area C, but no one cares. Good news, we have plenty of experimental models to test. Yes, test. Test to your heart's content, test after test after test. We'll have so much fun. The crazed laughter of the rodent reverberated throughout the deserted buildings. Battle droids from a Star Wars film marched out of subterranean bunkers as the Imperial March played and the ground trembled. This wasn't on the pamphlet, Iida yelled as he fled from blaster fire. Powerloader watched in amazement as a new thermal exhaust port was pierced through the chest of his beloved 0-pointer. That color, he replied, boric acid. Inko always added it to whatever plasma emissions she made for that striking green color. She called it her signature. Maijima grumbled. A waste of boron if you ask me. Aizawa questioned, a student brought in an outside weapon? Maijima frowned down at the student standing among his fallen robots and said, that student is the outside weapon. Some techno-quirk merging mechanical components. Figures she had a kid like that. Inko thinks she can still mock me, does she? Well, I'll show her. Aizawa interrupted him with a band of capture scarf just as he was about to activate additional robots. You're not activating more robots. But why not? They already destroyed them all. Clearly we need to amp up the exam. As much as I am inclined to agree, Nezu responded, that wouldn't be fair to the other examinees. Maijima was grinning maniacally. Come on, Nezu. Don't you want to test them out? The mention of the forbidden word made every teacher in the room wince. A second too late, Aizawa's scarf encircled Maijima's mouth. Nezu's eyes widened and became vacant as his head turned toward Maijima. He made a fateful announcement, twitching and muttering excitedly to himself as he pressed the intercom button. A few more keystrokes revealed Maijima's personal projects that were sitting in storage. Those better not kill our students, Maijima, Aizawa growled, looking down at the battle droids advancing on the escaping teenagers. Calm down, he said after Aizawa took off the gag. They're all programmed with the same combat protocols as the standard bots, I think. While Maijima ran to an emergency box and used his elbow to break the glass, Aizawa left him tied up. He pulled out a bag of Gold Tips Imperial and the electric tea kettle. As he read the directions, Aizawa said, "Remind me again why this stuff takes 25 minutes to brew." "If you have any better ideas, I'm all ears," Midnight said, attempting to yank Nezu away from the panel. The principal used her own whip to hog-tie her after throwing her over his head. Half of her clothes fell off as she writhed on the floor, and a ball gag mysteriously appeared in her mouth. More sensibly, the other teachers huddled in the room's corner and prayed to whatever god they believed might hear them. With a long-suffering sigh, Aizawa switched on the kettle. Katsuki examined the crumpled zero-pointer wreckage. Its lights flickered weakly and a deep, jagged hole pierced its chest. "Shitty hair," Katsuki said quietly. "I may have only known you for 5 minutes, but you proved yourself on the battlefield today. I swear your sacrifice won't be in vain." A plate flew into the air as metal squealed. With a broad smile on his face, Kirishima emerged from the wreckage, battered, with a bloody nose and still smoking from his nitroglycerin-powered launch. With both arms raised, he exclaimed, "That was manly. Quit standing around and find more robots to punch." "Yes, sir," Kirishima said, surveying the burning rubble that lined each street. I think they ran out." "That's what they want you to think. There's always more robots. Sneaky bastards." Battle droids strode out as a road segment slid aside just in time. Katsuki grinned. "They're bringing out the big guns for me. About time." The battle droids spun around and started shooting as Katsuki bounded toward their formation. Katsuki surged into their front ranks, slicing through the blaster bolts. Heads screamed and metallic limbs flew as Katsuki pulled them from their bodies. The droid commander yelled, "Retreat, run away." The droids dropped their weapons in panic. Kirishima smashed heads and torsos with his hardened fists as they ran, while Katsuki blasted them apart. One droid pulled another to relative safety in an alleyway. The right leg of the fallen droid had broken in two, and smoke poured from a huge hole in its chest. The fallen droid exhaled weakly and said, "Leave me and save yourself, XC-182. My capacitor's blown out." "No, you can still make it. Just hold on. Tell my kid Akafe that I have positive associations with his existence." The lights on the droid winked. "No, come back. You still have your primary directives to carry out," XC-182 cried as it held its fallen comrade. Katsuki used a droid's severed head to hack his way through a wooden door. "Here's Johnny," exclaimed Katsuki crazily through the splintered wood. As Katsuki destroyed it, XC-182 screamed. A small droid, shorter than the others, staggered through the debris in the smoke-filled aftermath of the battle until it came across the remains of its assigned parental unit. With a vow of vengeance against the human who had slaughtered them all, it lifted the dead droid's head and pressed it against its own. A shadow hung over the small droid. It looked back slowly, frozen in fear. With a few nitroglycerin pops, Katsuki exclaimed, "Whoops, looks like I missed one." The teachers gazed in open bewilderment at the unsettlingly human-like behavior of the robots. They all gazed at Powerloader together. "When I programmed those, I was really inebriated," the support teacher shrugged. In the face of a horde of battle droids, Izuku searched the internet for the most effective way to defeat clankers. The internet mentioned acrobatics and lightsabers. Izuku performed a double front flip into the center of the droid army's ranks after grabbing a lightsaber from his chest a few seconds later. "Is that a lightsaber?" Cementoss asked up in the viewing deck. Powerloader fought the capture scarf that was holding his arms to his sides, saying, "What? Inko made one too. I have to see this." With an angry expression over the electric kettle, Aizawa declared, "You're on timeout for saying the T word. Come on, please, I'll make sure the robots don't do anything too dangerous." "They'll be fine, now sit down." Mineta flew into the window at that very moment. Aizawa released Powerloader as Mineta slid down, looking at midnight before he fell off. Fine, but you better. Yes. This is everything I ever wanted, exclaimed Majima as she leapt to the window. With a sigh, Aizawa returned to the tea. Iida tore through the droids' ranks and kicked their heads off while Izuku hacked his way through them. After seeing the destruction he caused, Izuku remarked, "That seems much more effective than lightsabers." "What do we do?" the droid army asked, in complete confusion. "Fret not, puny droid. I have the perfect plan. It's..." The tactician droid chuckled smugly. The tactician droid was speared from behind by a lightsaber. The dying tactician droid whispered, "Hit it until it dies," as 15287 held it. "You heard him. Group up and hit it until it dies," the droid yelled as the tactician gasped and turned off. With every lightsaber swing, the clusters of droids fell like wheat, and blasters were a bad choice for melee weapons. A shuddering cough stopped the survivors as they fled. As General Grievous strode forward, 4 lightsabers came to life. Izuku blinked at the newcomer, and Iida retreated. He learned exactly how to react from his mother. In the voice of a 200-year-old actor, Izuku said, "Hello there." "Yes. It's everything I imagined," Majima yelled from the viewing deck. "Come on, Grievous, I programmed your lines." Claiming to cough once more, General Grievous remarked, "Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection." "No," yelled Power Loader. "Wrong line." With his head tilted, Izuku remarked, "General Grievous, you're shorter than I expected." "It's all wrong." Izuku charged up his arm cannon while General Grievous whirled its blades. The bullet burned a hole through its chest and went through the swirling blades perfectly. Izuku remarked as Grievous collapsed, "So uncivilized." Majima remarked, "Well, that was anticlimactic, good thing I made more." Dozens of Grievouses surrounded Izuku at that precise moment. As Izuku charged another shot, some Grievouses stabbed each other, some coughed and fell over, and one lopped off its own head as its lightsabers spun. "There are still a lot of bugs to work out," Majima said, shaking his head at the fallen Grievous robots. "I think that's the last of them," Iida said. "Shouldn't we check on that girl you rescued earlier?" Izuku and Iida passed the zero-pointer and rummaged through the debris, walking over piles of beheaded robots. They were directed correctly by the rocks that were floating in midair. Ochako pressed her hand against another rock and felt her stomach heave. "Almost a Erpa got Ida," she said. It swayed in midair. As she eyed the finishing touch, a 4-story brick fall section aid that pinned her legs to the floor as she groaned in exasperation. Izuku inquired, "Do you require assistance?" "Oh, thank God, yes, please, let me just..." Izuku threw it off her before Ochako could light the wall. She was helped up a bit too quickly by Iida for the comfort of her stomach. Ochako said, "Oh no," as she became violently green. A glittering, rainbow-colored torrent gushed out of her as she vomited on the ground. Izuku inquired, "Do you require medical assistance?" "No, I'm fine, She interrupted herself with more vomit. "Most undignified," yelled Iida. "Why are you vomiting in the middle of the exam, on UA grounds no less? It's disrespectful to all the other students here, and all those who came before us, not to mention the teachers and whoever has to clean up after you." Ochako gave him a fierce look. "I can't help it, my quirk." Iida looked at her intently as she heaved up more glistening vomit and said, "Your quirk is vomiting. That would explain the unique color." "It's just a side effect, analysis complete," commented Izuku. Scalpels and saw blades appeared at Izuku's hands, and he said, "Analysis suggests that you either have quirk-induced nausea, or cancer. Commencing recommended cancer treatment." As the blades drew closer, Ochako swallowed her next burp. "I'm fine, see? Please get those away from me." The blades pulled back into Izuku's grasp. "Symptoms have stopped. Treatment successful. Please see a medical professional if remission occurs." "You sure? So, what was this about more robots I heard about? I haven't seen any." Iida protruded his chest with pride. "My diligent friend and I have already cleared them out." "Really?" Ochako pointed to the back of them. "What about those?" Screaming one-liners like, "Come with me if you want to live," and "I'll be back," in thick Austrian accents. Schwarzenegger impersonators wearing leather jackets and sunglasses stomped through the debris. A number of them had their faces ripped off, exposing red eyes and chrome skulls. Izuku halted after aiming his arm cannon. Power running low, switching to battery-saving mode. Izuku approached a Terminator, seized its head, and took a clean bite to the face. As Izuku chewed and swallowed the scrap metal, oil poured down his chin. The robot yelled, It's not a Tuma, as it stumbled back. After glancing at the bitten Terminator's mauled face, Ochako puked once more. Holding Kirishima in front of him like a shield, Katsuki dashed into the ranks of super battle droids while being pelted by blue blaster fire. Grinning, the hardened student soaked up blaster shots. After breaking through their defenses, Katsuki used the hardened missile to knock over several dozen droids and blast Kirishima away. Battle droids atop hover tanks observed the carnage farther back. One said, "Any word from General Grievous?" Grievous number 47 asked us to kill the Jedi, and number 86 said to raise the ray shields, whatever that means. The first droid peered at the carnage through binoculars. "That looks like a Jedi to me. Prepare to engage." The guns thrummed as their shots charged up, and the tanks rumbled forward. Katsuki smiled as he looked at them. "Open fire." At Katsuki's feet, an earth-shaking explosion erupted. After the dust had settled, the hover tanks were surrounded by charred earth. "We did it!" exclaimed the droid. "We actually killed a Jedi. My manufacturer is going to be so proud of me." Across the droid, a shadow moved. It glanced up in time to see Katsuki's ash-smeared, smiling face staring down at it. Katsuki blew its head off while it screamed. "What's going on?" the tank's droid driver yelled. Grabbing the droid, Katsuki threw it over the side. The other tanks turned around and aimed after witnessing one of their own tanks being hijacked. Katsuki slammed down on the joystick and scratched his head over the controls. The two on either side opened fire as the tank lurched forward. Droids screamed as they crawled from the wreckage, and both tanks burst into balls of fire. Katsuki grabbed Kirishima by the shirt and dragged him inside after crashing through the ranks of droids. "Drive. I've got more robots to kill. This is the manliest day of my life," Kirishima shouted as he drove the tank through every obstacle he could find while smiling and firing shots randomly with the cannon. A swarm of T-800 Terminators stalked the streets while Jiro and a few other unfortunate test-takers huddled down in the wreckage of a building. Aoyama clutched his stomach and said, "Mon ami, this is it, I'm too gorgeous to die this way." "Relax," Jiro sneered. As she pressed a jack to the ground and heard distant screaming and explosions, she said, "The school isn't going to let us die, I think." Jiro almost lost his hearing in an explosion near their hiding place. A plasma explosion destroyed 2 Terminators, and smaller explosions shot down more. After roaring past and smashing through another building, a hover tank came to a halt in front of them. Katsuki stood on top of his tank and glared at them. "Get in, losers, we're going robot hunting." "I can't help but notice that there's only a few kinds of robots out there," Vlad King stated. "I thought I'd be more impressed." The power loader laughed. "Those are just the beta prototypes. The alpha stuff is way too dangerous. I have it locked behind a password that Nezu would never guess." Alexa said from Nezu's terminal, "Password accepted." "What? How did he know the password was password 1? Aizawa gave him a fierce look. "Really? What? It made me add a number." Alexa chirped, unleashing my shitty coworkers. Maijima turned pale. "No, wait, those aren't ready, put those back," he said, reaching for the console, but Nezu took him out of his chair and suplexed him into the floor. A hole in the earth appeared. Squinting up at the overcast sky, a robotic replica of Aizawa leaned out and muttered, "Too bright outside. Where did I put my sleeping bag? I haven't had enough coffee for this. Everyone's expelled." Examining his robotic self, Aizawa's eye twitched. Maijima instinctively sank farther into the floor as he directed his cold glare at her. "Maijima-san, care to explain?" Present Mike laughed at the robot from half a mile away. "That's amazing, he nailed you perfectly. Hey, look at me, I'm a hotshot radio host and I'm going to sing loud enough to wake the dead while Maijima's welding his robots together," yelled a robotic Hizashi, who waltzed out and sang Nickelback loudly. Robot Aizawa grimaced. "Hey," squawked Present Mike. "I do not sound like that, and Nickelback, really?" Robot Sekijiro glared at Robot Aizawa as he stomped out. "This year, my students will beat yours. I better go over to Maijima and demand he give all my students the best gear possible, and before Aizawa gets his, that will show him." Maijima received an increasing number of glares as the robots marched out. "One of my students must have snuck in those voice prompts," the support instructor said, laughing nervously. "Take it easy on him. It's all in good fun, right?" Midnight said, still bound up. Wearing a Playgirl costume with bunny ears and showing off its expertly crafted cleavage, the Midnight duplicate emerged. "Yoo-hoo, Maijima honey, where are you? Mommy's feeling needy tonight." As Midnight stalked over to Power Loader, The ropes came loose. Majima shivered and crawled back in a corner, sensing his impending death. Midnight whipped. Looks like somebody's been a bad boy. You need to be punished. Terminators and battle droids marched past students cowering in an alleyway over in Area C. Mineta whispered, "What if we gave up?" The scaly teenager shivered and said, "Are you crazy? You saw what they did to that other guy. I can still hear him screaming." Mineta hurried out as a teacher went by. "Aizawa-sensei, there's too many of them. What do we do?" At them, metallic red eyes glowed menacingly. Mineta was grabbed by Robot Aizawa's capture scarf, which then slammed him through a building. "You're expelled. I think this exam is going well," Iida exclaimed as he and Izuku smashed through yet another shambling bunch of Terminators. "Our enrollment should be assured." Ochako said, "Speak for yourself," while gripping her stomach. "I'm still feeling nauseous." The earth trembled. More holes appeared, and lumbering steel giants emerged from them. Machine gun barrels whirled in the arms of a smiling skull face that gazed down at Iida. Iida yelled, "I take it back," while he carried Ochako to safety. In his wake, rubber bullets chipped the concrete. "We are highly unprepared for this turn of events." Izuku leapt into the air and struck the robot's head with a crash. Izuku's fist crumpled the mech's torso. "There are mechs that are stationary just north of here," Izuku informed them. "It appears that we can pilot them." Iida rushed for the empty mechs after glancing at the horde of enormous robots, some of which were similar to the Zero-Pointer, that were stomping through the city. 3 mechs crouched in a clearing of fallen buildings, their boxy black cockpits empty and open. One was pink with jagged metal claws on one arm, and the other 2 were painted black and carried assault rifles in their hands. "Ooh." Ochako's eyes brightened when she saw Gurren. "I call dibs on the pink one." Iida looked doubtfully at the beret while Ochako clambered into the pink one. "Are you sure we will be able to pilot these?" "Why wouldn't you? The controls are quite simple to understand." "Really? I'm glad that whoever designed these had usability in mind designing their interface. Very responsible of them." The Gurren spun in circles so violently that it stirred up a cloud of dust as soon as its hatch closed. Ochako wrenched at the joysticks inside, feeling her stomach turn over. Ochako lost control of her stomach quickly and threw up as the Gurren spun, splattering rainbow fluids all over the place. "Don't throw up in there, I just put in the upholstery," Majima cried as rainbow sludge poured out of the hatch. Iida, meanwhile, scowled at the bewildering wall of dials and buttons before him. "Izuku said this would be simple, and I should trust in my companion. This should be the throttle, right?" he said, holding onto both joysticks. He pushed both throttles forward, and the Barai's shoulders began to fire missiles. 2 mechs fell in smoking heaps after taking missiles to the face as they rounded a corner. Whoops. Maybe this one. Iida was pulled forward when a slash Harkon grabbed a building. He collided with another mech and crushed it underfoot as he fell. "I have to get back up. Maybe this button would help?" On his legs, rockets came to life and pushed the downed mech ahead. Along the way, he struck 2 more mechs and ground them to dust. Majima grinned in agreement as Iida collided with a building and brought it down on more mechs. "I'm impressed he knows how to pilot that." Jiro declared, "We're screwed," as Kirishima crashed the tank into a gigantic robot. "We are so screwed." Like a plastic bag, the robot snatched the tank by both sides and ripped it in 2. Like fruit snacks, Jiro and the other pupils on board fell out. Like a furious jalapeno plus or minus a wasabi fruit snack, Bakugo blasted a hole through the robot's torso as he launched himself through the air. Kirishima yelled, "Screw you, I was still using that," at the charred remnants. Guys?" inquired Jiro. "Now what?" Bakugo inquired. "What do you mean now what?" He gestured toward a crowd of enormous robots. "We fight them, of course." "On foot?" inquired Ciro. "We'll be crushed, literally." Jiro connected the ground to her amplifier. She discovered a swarm of humanoid robots, painted in various shades of red, white, and blue, just around the corner, thanks to the plot convenience and the power of sound waves. They all carried swords or guns folded behind their backs. Ciro exclaimed, "Sweet! We can use the mechs to destroy the mechs." Bakugo approached one and completely destroyed it. Ciro used a roll of tape to stop him as he proceeded to the next one. "What the heck, man? We can use those." Bakugo stared at Ciro with wide eyes and a deranged expression, pressing his face into his. "That's what they want you to think. They make things easy at first, then you get complacent, and that's when they get you." "Well, it's that or get crushed by giant robots. I think I'll take my chances." After Ciro got into one, The hatch slammed shut. After a few seconds, the robot's entire body began to vibrate violently. With Zero still gripping the twin joysticks and his head shaking from the vibrations, it fell into a heap. He shook his head and said, "Guess I picked a lemon." With a smile on his face, Bakugo said, "Go ahead, try another. Maybe then you'll see I'm right." "You know, I wasn't going to, but now I will, just to prove you wrong." Zero inspected the next one and tapped it warily. Zero hopped in, confident in its structural soundness. Smoke poured from every nook and cranny of the mech after it closed. Zero stumbled out as the hatch flew open, missing an eyebrow and covered in soot from head to toe. "Nope, I've had enough. Let's just move on." A tremor shook the ground as Zero took one step. In the distance, a giant lifted its head above the rooftops and looked around. Nervously swallowing, Zero sprinted to the biggest robot among them, prayed a little, and jumped in. For once, Katsuki was not responsible for the fiery explosion that tore it apart moments later. Zero looked out from the rumpled heap of his cockpit, his hair splayed back and slightly charred on the front. He encircled another robot with his tape and knocked it over. "Nope, I'm done. Destroy them all." Bakugo smiled, gladly. With their guns blazing, purple Sutherlands darted around the corner. They yelled, "Glory to Britannia! Surrender filthy 11s, and we might spare your pathetic lives." An orange glow shimmered along the length of the superheated metal blade that Izuku drew. Izuku sliced through 4 Sutherlands, exploding their fuel stores as he darted through gunfire. As 2 Sutherlands charged from either side, impaling themselves on the other's lance, Iida took out 2 by falling on his back, and Ochako, off to the side, batted aside 3 lances and slashed their wielders to scraps while she spun. More powerful than its smaller siblings, the Lancelot drew a glistening green blade and charged Izuku. The Lancelot was flattened by a foot as their blades collided. The foot's owner, a monstrous black and red creature with a huge smile on its face, removed its shades and threw Izuku aside along with them. As he landed inside a building, his mech broke apart. As Izuku clambered out of the wreckage, Kaminari looked at him in disbelief. "Dude, you can pilot those things?" Izuku turned to face the twisted remains of his Burai. "This one can no longer be piloted. I recommend finding an alternative means of destroying robots." Right." Both Ochako and Iida touched down inside the structure. As she fell to the ground, Ochako moaned and uttered, I can feel the earth spinning." "You seem to be suffering from severe motion sickness, or you have cancer. Preparing surgical equipment." Then Ochako leapt up. "I'm fine." The Gurren smiled down at them as he tore off the roof. After swallowing, Ochako remarked, "I'm less fine now." Kaminari grinned. "Don't worry, I'll send this one packing. 10 million volt highly discriminate shock." The electricity hurled homophobic epithets at the Gurren in typical discriminatory fashion. Instead, though, the electricity twisted and hit Izuku. Yuha oops. As Izuku's battery absorbed the excess power, he hummed audibly, "Charge complete." Returning to high performance mode. The Gurren's torso exploded with green charged plasma, which emerged in a spiral pattern on the other side. Sato asked, "Mind if I come with you guys?" after glancing up at the collapsing mech and back at the student who had punctured it. The slurred words, "What? No, I'll be fine by myself," came out of Kaminari's mouth. "Those robots won't know what hit them." From the other side of the room, a Terminator dropped on him. Izuku cut it in half with his lightsaber after it had both hands around Kaminari's throat. After giving him a thorough vibe check and panting heavily, Kaminari composed himself and remarked, "On second thought, I don't mind giving you a hand." Present Mike yelled from a great distance, "Is that tea almost done? Feels like this test's been going on for 4 weeks. Powerloader, yeah, hurry up on that," added, "I think I'm running out of robots." "How are you running out of robots? You've got Borg and Cybermen out there. Aren't those the same thing?" "They're not, you Philistine. One's a cybernetic hive mind that incorporates any organics they run across in Star Trek, and the other is a cybernetic hive mind that incorporates any organics they run across in Doctor Who." "Enough, you two," yelled Aizawa. 5 more minutes on the tea, then we get to clean up this mess." After hearing that, Nezu summoned the big boys and ceased giving commands to the army of robots at his disposal. Off in Test Area C, where there was neither a walking weapon of mass destruction nor a walking weapon of mass destruction with attitude issues, Koda and Mineta huddled with a group of generic, scared students in a small hollow under a collapsed building. A swarm of Daleks floated past their flimsy shelter, firing lasers at some poor victim while yelling, "Exterminate! in tinny voices. As the students all fled behind rocks, Cybermen strode by, pausing to look inside the house before continuing. Dude, are those flying trash cans? I bet we could take those. You bet we could take the battle droids, and look where we ended up, yelled a fellow student, who had blaster burns on his back. Just shut up and hope we don't get caught. One whispered, should we make a break for it? Are you kidding? Inquired Mineta. He took a brick from behind his ear and exclaimed, see, last time we tried, this human-looking robot yeeted me into a wall. I'm still picking masonry out of my hair. Koda wished he could converse with an animal. Naturally, they all had the common sense to leave the area as soon as robots from all of the major franchises started shooting in the streets. The students were silenced by a rumble in the ground. In their fictitious city, the biggest hole yet slid open, and the ground moaned. With each step, a bipedal dinosaur-like robotic leviathan shook the ground and shattered concrete as it lumbered onto the streets from the wide chasm. Mecha Godzilla roared loudly enough to shatter every pane of glass as it towered over the destroyed structures surrounding it. Mineta collapsed to his knees and cried, I want to go home, as one of the walls collapsed due to the earthquakes, revealing to the students the enormous robot dinosaur and the gathered armies pacing the streets. Although the Cyberman who threw Mineta half a mile was not quite strong enough to comply with his request, it at least tried. Kaminari uttered a woozy. Jet fuel can't melt steel beams, from behind Izuku. Izuku shot a laser beam through a battalion of Robocops, sending sparks down his body. Is he okay? Inquired Ochako. As Sato put it, it's his quirk, apparently, he gets stupider as he uses it. Kaminari yelled, the moon landing was a hoax. Leaping out of the alley, bending Rodriguez swung at Iida. Bite my shiny metal ass, the robot said, bending over and laughing. Izuku chomped a hole in the metal and said, okay. My programming isn't designed for this shit, Bender said, examining the damage before unscrewing his own head. The earth is flat. I don't see it curving underneath our feet, can you? Saying, warning, low battery, Izuku turned to face Kaminari. I estimate I have 2 minutes of runtime until Kaminari-san's IQ hits the single digits. COVID isn't real. It's a hoax invented by Bill Gates to put microchips in the vaccines. Ochako trembled. If that's what he's saying now, I don't want to know how much stupider he can get. The earth trembled. From the depths of UA, 3 robotic, serpentine heads slithered, each examining its surroundings and launching plasma beams at anything that moved. Kaminari was shocked into shocking Izuku until he was completely depleted of energy after Izuku pinched him. With a silly smile, Kaminari fell to the ground, thumbs up to the sky, and muttered, aliens made the pyramids. Izuku pointed to the enormous robot and remarked, I've analyzed the specs of the Mecha Hydra. Each head has a distinct computer, and the entire structure is designed to build 2 heads for each one that's destroyed. The only way to disable it is to simultaneously destroy all 3 computers located in different spots in each head. Wonderful job, Midoriya, Iida exclaimed. Did you use your quirk-enhanced senses to deduce all that? No, I consulted the internet. Maijima-san made a Facebook post 3 days ago at 2:03 a.m. with full schematics and combat data for this robot. Even cleverer. Excellent researching. I was right to hold you in such high regard. It will take all my power to fire a shot strong enough to take out all 3 computers. Iida, I need you to keep their attention. Understood. Ochako, make me lighter. Ochako tapped him and gave him a sickly thumbs up while holding back her vomit. And Sato, throw me on my signal, at a 42.6-degree angle, using 5,525.6 newtons of force. What? Izuku changed his plans and blinked. Just throw me really hard. Sato bulked up and snorted a line of sugar. Why didn't you say so? Okay, here we go. Wait, I didn't say, yeet. Izuku shot short bursts of plasma from his feet to course correct, lined up the shot, and made some last-minute calculations as he shot through the air. As Iida raced past, all 3 heads turned to fire at him, giving Izuku a shot at all 3 heads. Each head was instantly vaporized by a bright green beam. With vile red eyes, a gigantic mechanical squid gazed down at Katsuki. Your species shall be harvested. The cycle must continue. Yo, shitty hair, mentioned Katsuki. You're up. Kirishima pumped a fist and crawled inside a pipe. This day keeps getting manlier. An extra touched the pipe and shrank it, tightening the fit as Bakugo got ready to light it. A third patted it in with mushrooms, and a third welded the cracks shut. I am the product of the greatest engineers in galactic history, the Reaper declared emphatically. Your puny weapon is no match for the might that has toppled interplanetary civilizations since the dawn of time. Katsuki set off his biggest explosion to date, saying, "Can it, asshole?" Kirishima shot out in a red blur and slammed into the bulbous frame of the Reaper. The machine fell to the ground with a high-pitched shriek. Katsuki gave the fallen remnants a salute. "You fought valiantly to the end, shitty hair. Your sacrifice will not be in vain." Awase gave him a disbelieving glance. "You killed him to take down that robot?" Katsuki took hold of his collar. "He gave his life to protect humanity. It's a sacrifice any of us might need to make." Mecha Godzilla roared its challenge to the heavens off in the distance. When Katsuki turned to face the extras, they retreated. "Cowards, all of you. We go splat when we hit it," Komori said. "Not like there's anyone else with a hardening quirk." "I know I'm missing something super manly right now," exclaimed Tetsutestu as he writhed on the ground in Area B, hog-tied and protected by droids. Katsuki whispered, "It's still worth a try. Right, Plan B you. What's your name? You make things bigger, right?" he said with a shrug. "Yes," Kodai replied. Katsuki gestured toward the enormous robot. "About that big?" "Sure. Go ahead then." Kodai blinking, startled. "Wait, you." "Well, if anyone else wants to punch the dinosaur robota." The others retreated. "All right, but this will give you a terrible headache afterward," Kodai said, tapping his chest. With a hint of boredom, Mechagodzilla strode through the streets, making both humans and robots feel sorry for their pathetic lives. Without the ability to accomplish anything meaningful, its creator had decided to give it enough intelligence to comprehend the insignificance of the carnage beneath its feet. For the first time, the ground trembled under its feet. A giant Katsuki was stamping toward it when it turned. "Finally, a worthy foe," it exclaimed. "Our battle will be legendary." Mechagodzilla lifted its own arm to block Katsuki's punch. The entire robot was torn apart by the subsequent explosion. She shrunk Katsuki back down to size after Kodai caught up. Sadly, the memo hadn't quite reached his head. Katsuki's SUV-sized head was stretched to stand atop a human-sized body as it lay on the ground. Kodai remarked, "Told you you'd get a headache." Aizawa slipped on safety goggles and a lab apron as the Goldtips Imperial was almost finished. He opened a jar of chemically pure sugar, teared a volumetric cylinder, and placed a laboratory scale on a block of marble. He used a metal scoopula to tip tiny bits of sugar into the flask until he had the precise mass of sugar needed for Nezu's tea. Aizawa filled it with tea using a funnel, then leveled the tea at the line with a dropper. He swirled the tea vigorously until all the sugar had gone. Aizawa shook out every last drop of the volumetric flask before tipping it into a heated mug. He prepared a small, accurate dose by dipping an Eppendorf pipette into a jar of cream from a nearby dairy farm. He swirled the tea with a spoon and then poured in the cream, which swirled in a wispy white pattern. Aizawa then put on a black butler's uniform with white frills on the cuffs and collar. Holding the tea in one hand, he placed it on a silver platter. He strode up to Nezu, his polished shoes clattering on the floor. As he put down his offering, bowed, and moved away, sweat trickled down his brow. A few seconds went by. As they watched Nezu with a mixture of wonder and fear, all of the teachers in the room held their breath. With eyes big enough to see stars in the daylight, Nezu's paws darted across the keyboard as he gazed at the screen. His mutterings about experiments and test subjects were broken up by the odd insane cackle. Nezu could smell the steam rising from the mug. The keys froze beneath his paws. Nezu reached for the mug and briefly held it under his nose, his eyes vacant and his nose twitching. Present Mike called out from his vantage point half a mile away, "Hey, is that tea ready yet?" The teachers shushed him together, and Present Mike echoed, "Sorry." Nezu drank. His pupils grew back to their usual size, and a warm smile appeared on his face. As he gazed out at the devastation and carnage before him, his face became puzzled. "Good heavens, looks like the students really went overboard this year. We'll have to lecture them on collateral damage." All of the instructors released the breath they had been holding. "How are we going to judge points this year?" Aizawa asked, glancing at the Mechagodzilla wreckage. Nezu remarked pleasantly, "The same way we always do, I imagine, unless there was something I missed." Aizawa gestured toward the piles of robots outside the window. Nezu looked out and replied, Did some of the prototypes get released by mistake?" "Oh, no matter. I'm sure we'll think of something." "It appears some of the students were seriously injured by the prototypes." Nezu smiled. "That's what we pay Recovery Girl for, isn't it?" Through Test Site B, the examinees' groans and tears loomed like a fog over the fallen robots and debris. Students with blaster burns, broken bones, and concussions from the robotic assault huddled under fallen beams, against crumbling walls, and anywhere else that provided a hazy shield from the robotic threat that had overpowered them all. A clacking, rhythmic sound, an auditory light in the darkness, cut through that gloomy fog. Recovery Girl tapped her cane as she walked through the debris. She buried her cane in the ground, reached into the jar of gummies she was holding, and put a handful in her mouth every 10 steps. She went up to a student who had a broken leg while she was still munching on the gummies. "Are you a nurse?" he asked, his eyes watering as he looked up at her. Recovery Girl laughed and replied, "Dearie, I'm Recovery Girl. I healed a man with no stomach and half a lung, and he's still kicking. Now, let's take a look at that leg, shall we?" Pulling up his trousers, the student gritted his teeth. Below his knee, Recovery Girl tutted at the purple, swollen lump. "Just a smooch, and it'll be all better. This won't hurt a bit." The student screamed in pain as soon as her lips touched his bruised skin. The pieces of bone wriggled back into place and fused together, causing the flesh to writhe. "Just cut it off, please. Make it stop," the student cried as the swelling subsided. Recovery Girl exclaimed, "All better," and held out her jar of gummies, saying, "Here, have one. These will perk you right up. Healing like that takes a lot out of you." With trembling fingers, the student took a gummy and chewed it while still crying. In a matter of seconds, their eyes were fixed on the sky, their faces blank. Their pupils widened to the point where their whole eyes turned black, and a shudder went up their spine. The student laughed and caressed a pink giraffe with polka dots that he alone could see. He looked squeamishly at the student who was currently tripping enough balls to fill every McDonald's mosh pit in the world as she strode up to the next one, whose right arm hung limp as a cooked spaghetti noodle. "Can I have the gummy first?" he asked after saying a brief prayer. With a shrug, Recovery Girl extended the jar. "All the same to me, Sonny. Now let's fix that arm of yours." Recovery Girl kissed his broken arm as the gummy took effect. The arm writhed like a snake while the student gazed at it numbly until it straightened out. Recovery Girl swatted at him with a cane until he stopped trying to bend it back over. She turned to Site A and marched forward, gorging herself on gummies as she went, after drugging up and healing the students at Site B. Izuku was slammed through a brick wall by the force of his plasma projectile as soon as he fired the Mecha Hydra. His head was wrenched away as the side of his face struck a stone. Izuku pushed his way out of the debris, unfazed by his injuries. Iida hurried to Izuku's landing spot. He was relieved when his prospective classmate got up and extended his arms. "Most excellently done, fellow student. Your plan was flawlessly executed, and I am honored to have been a part of it." Then came Ochako and the others. She said, "Your head's backwards," and pointed at Izuku in horror. Izuku saw his own ass when he looked down. "Ah, please give me a moment so I can adjust the rotation of my neck." With a sickening snap, Izuku grabbed his own head with both hands and wrenched it aside, then turned around and rolled his neck, declaring, "Recalibration complete. I appreciate your input regarding my hardware problem." Iida exclaimed, "My word, you ought to have let a qualified medical professional handle such a serious injury." As the others turned green and covered their mouths, Ochako sprinted away and spat rainbows onto the floor. "Hey guys, where'd that giant lizard go?" Kaminari said, stumbling to his feet and looking blankly at everyone. I desired to touch it. The rainbow puddle on the ground caught his attention. "What's this stuff?" Kaminari dipped his fingers in the puddle and licked it before anyone could stop him, saying, "MMA tastes like Skittles." The others buried their faces, too ashamed to give Kaminari a much-needed reality check, while Izuku stared nonchalantly, blissfully unaware of the horror unfolding before him. Iida's mouth flapped open and shut, as if he were giving a stern lecture, but not a whisper of air left his throat. Gazing back and forth between Kaminari and the vomit he had just tasted, Ochako saw her cheeks swell before she threw up another rainbow-filled torrent at Kaminari's feet. Even though Kaminari's brain was fried, it eventually collected the disparate facts, put them together in a semi-coherent report, and presented them to an assembly of the few functioning neurons he still had rattling around his skull. He looked at the vomit, then his fingers, then Ochako, and finally back at the vomit. Iida's face turned blue as his lungs stopped working. Kaminari licked his fingers once more, still unable to comprehend the reality that was happening to him. Sato ran off, fighting to keep down his own breakfast. Ochako stared at Kaminari in confusion, and then puked up another batch. Kaminari's eyes widened in shock this time, and he backed away from the puddle, wiped his fingers on his shirt, and attempted to use his hands to scrub his tongue. As Izuku observed the mayhem, he inquired, Should I also try some of the weird liquid? Ochako gave a final dry heave and joined Iida as his eyes rolled into his sockets and he fell to the ground. As Kaminari looked horrified at his own hands, he declared, "I'm never using my quirk again." Izuku's mechanical eyes focused on the elderly hero as his group made their way to UA's testing facility and heard the rhythmic tap of Recovery Girl's cane. Shuzenji Chio, Recovery Girl, currently employed at UA. She was born on April 4, 2076, registered as Quirk Heel, regularly buys Yorumusha brand arthritis cream, and lists House and Dexter as her favorite Netflix shows. Sato remarked, "Dude, that's really eerie. You seem to be in better shape than the others," Recovery Girl said, glancing at the students. "It can't hurt to distribute some gummies, though. They'll give you a boost." Sato smiled and said, "Gummies? Fantastic. I could use a top off." He put a handful in his mouth, and as he swallowed, his entire body trembled, his muscles protruding and tearing his clothes. Sato laughed loudly and stomped the ground so hard that everyone around him was knocked down. "These candies are incredible, heavens," Sato roared. "It's time to kick the ass." Kaminari ran up to her after Sato ran off in a different direction and exclaimed, "Me next, I'm going to get really jacked." After swallowing them whole, Kaminari's entire body began to vibrate violently, producing a high-pitched hum. Then, as if a cathode TV were losing power, Kaminari's eyes dimmed and the vibrating stopped. He raised one hand and wriggled his fingers in front of his face. "When did my finger count increase?" Kaminari laughed and said, "I could use these to hold a lot of controllers." "What about the others? Are there any injuries I should be aware of?" inquired Recovery Girl. Ochako remarked, "Well, I am feeling a bit nauseous." Ochako ate one, placing her hands on her face and lifting her feet off the floor as Recovery Girl held out the jar, looking apprehensively at Kaminari drooling on the floor. "Whoa, I feel fantastic. I feel as though I'm floating," Ochako remarked. "One for you, dearie?" the Recovery Girl said, turning to face Iida. "No, thank you, madam. These gummies of yours appear to have very erratic side effects for everyone who takes them, and my parents told me never to accept unknown substances from strangers. I must first speak with my primary care physician and request an active ingredient list." Iida paused in the middle of his tirade, lowered his raised finger, and slumped his shoulders as Recovery Girl threw a gummy in his mouth. "That tastes pretty good," he said. "Thank you." "You're welcome." She said to Izuku, "Are there any health issues?" Iida remarked, "His head was backwards, neck broken. I'm able to fix that." "I'll get the lawyer," she said, frowning, and tapped her cane on the floor after she tried to kiss Izuku's cheek and nothing happened. Behind her, an office emerged from the debris, and the lawyer at the desk pointed to the pile of documents before him and said, "I'll need you to sign these waivers." "Best of luck, kid," said Recovery Girl over her shoulder as she left the office after Izuku signed and took pictures of the pages. "You'll require it." Nezu said, "Hey power loader," gazing out over piles of robots from well-known franchises. "Did you speak with our legal team before creating those robots? It's not like we're making a video of this stuff, right?" Maijima shrugged. Present Mike yelled from his vantage point half a mile away, "It has already received 50 million views." Nezu sipped his tea and remarked, "You know how ruthless Disney can be in protecting their intellectual property, don't you? They worked hard to acquire every last franchise in the world, and they will not tolerate anyone else using their toys." "What are they going to do, sue us?" Maijima snorted. A flag bearer at the front carried a black Mickey on a pale blue field, and from over the horizon, countless bland-faced men in three-piece suits, each carrying a suitcase, marched in rank and file towards the UA campus. The sound of footsteps, from feet too many to count but perfectly in sync, broke the silence. "Oh dear," Nezu replied, "it looks like they're filing a cease and desist." "So, we simply remove the video, correct?" The ground trembled as the rank and file strode forward, followed by a lumbering titan wearing a blue sailor suit and covered in white plumage. The monstrous creature flattened the debris beneath its webbed feet with its enormous, bloodshot eyes and its duckbill, which resembled two school buses crushed together. A thick iron collar clamped around its neck, and a group of lawyers wrangled it forward. When it spotted the UA campus, it roared in a high-pitched wheeze and rushed forward, yanking its handlers behind it. "I do believe they intend to make sure we cease and desist breathing," Aizawa said, frowning at the enormous army outside the gates of UA. "Not to worry," Nezu replied, "I have a foolproof weapon for exactly this occasion." "This fan fiction piece is a non-profit fan-based parody," Nezu said, clearing his throat as he walked over to one of the emergency glass cases labeled, "In Case of Disney," and smashed it open, removing the speech card and setting up the microphone. Shueisha, Viz Media, Shonen Jump, Studio Bones, Funimation, and Kohei Horikoshi are all subsidiaries of our great and generous Disney corporate overlords, and they are the owners of My Hero Academia. Support the original release, please. The lawyers, each as thin as a sheet of paper, ground to a halt as Nezu's words echoed across the campus, turned sideways, and vanished, while the giant Donald Duck moaned angrily to itself as it lumbered back across the ocean. Sounds like a wall broke, said Vlad King, as the room echoed with the sound of crumbling masonry coming from all directions. Yes, the fourth one, Nezu beamingly remarked, just ignore it and it should be fine. Confused, Maijima turned to face the outside world and said, I think more than 4 broke out there. I told you to disregard it. Kaminari drooled and gave off the occasional spark. Iida alternated between politely chatting with his neighbors and ranting about the evils of medical fraud, and Sato, wearing only his underwear and left sock, wore a spectacular black eye that God himself had given him. All of the examinees had gathered in the rubble of a testing area, shrugging off the effects of Recovery Girl's treatment. From his nest in Aizawa's scarf, Nezu spoke to the crowd, saying, I appreciate everyone coming together. We would normally send you all on your way and provide you with the results the following week, but because of the unique circumstances this time, we're attempting a different strategy. How much did those other robots really cost? Nezu shrugged and said, how about we have a show of hands before we ask that? Anyone interested in joining our hero program? The students raised their hands in unison, traumatized and worn out by the robot invasion. Great, you're all fired. Koda, too shy to raise his hand or speak out, stayed nervously rooted at the spot, staring at Nezu as if the principal were about to chew off his feet. Mineta, caught between a rock and a hard place, or more accurately, Kirishima and Tetsu, struggled with tears running down his face to join the throng of students making their way to the gate, but the hardening pair proved too solid for him to budge. Nezu quickly counted the number of people and said, there are precisely 36 of you left. Well done, all of you are welcome. What about the results of our tests? I'll be honest, I think I failed, Mina was asked. Irrelevant. The UA always selects the top 36 candidates, 4 of whom are heroes' recommendations. The tests and points are meaningless because you are the only one remaining. How foolish of you. You stoop to accept those who are unworthy of UA's high standards just because they are all that's left, Iida cried. As his voice faded, Iida slouched over and said, it's a disgrace to. I don't see why it's a big deal, actually. Why not? They're still here. Iida shook his head. No, we have to uphold standards. It's not like there's anyone else to pick from, he shrugged. Then take only the finest that remain. Iida stood up straighter. The UA is the stronghold of the hero world, and for the benefit of Hero Society, it must continue to choose its candidates carefully. Oh dear, you still seem out of sorts, said Recovery Girl, advancing with a gummy in hand. Have another one here. Recovery Girl pushed the candy into Iida's mouth, and he relaxed. Nezu smiled and said, all right, we'll mail your acceptance letters. In the spring, see you all. Nezu turned to Cementoss after the students had left. Ishiyama-san, please make sure to return the cities to their original state. They are required for tomorrow's classes. As Cementoss gazed at block after block of debris and shattered robots, the cement hero sighed deeply and began shaping new structures out of the ruins. Bakugo smiled as he entered the 1A classroom, which was filled with extras and had no sign of the robot. The atmosphere was tense, and there were rumors of what difficulties were ahead. After all, if the entrance exam had armies of robots, then everything that followed had to be much worse. Baku bro, dude, Kirishima yelled, please take a seat. What will they have us do first, in your opinion? Cars that are bench-pressed? Can we use our bare hands to stop a train? Take us from a spring platform into a forest teeming with enormous shadow monsters that are ravenous for human flesh? Shivering violently, Mineta, who was seated next to him, prayed to all the female gods in the world for his salvation. A tiny explosion popped between Bakugo's fingers as he slapped his hands together. Who cares? Whatever they throw at me, I can handle it. At his words, Kirishima shed manly tears. So manly. You were the coolest person ever, I knew that. All of us are the coolest people ever. From a different desk, Monoma yelled, because we are all 1A. We will demonstrate to those 1B jerks that we are the highest class in this establishment. As the class gaped at the confused yellow beanbag that crawled on the floor like a caterpillar, it opened to reveal a tired face with bloodshot eyes and a dark shadow at 5 o'clock. 8 seconds. Don't waste my time the next time. What is 8 seconds for? Juru inquired. Aizawa yelled, "Don't ask dumb questions either," and took gym attire from his sleeping bag. "Now, put these on and go outside." Disgusted, Mina picked one up and said, "I hope you washed that sleeping bag, dude." An explosion shook the school as Aizawa's eye twitched. Half the students jumped beneath their desks, watching for any danger, and Bakugo and Kirishima stood, both smiling at the thought. Jiru was the first to cover her ears with her hands when she heard a muffled scraping sound coming from the hallway, but as the noise increased in volume, the other students did the same. Aizawa said, "Stay here, and I'll look into it." With his red hero suit charred and still burning on one shoulder, his yellow visor cracked, his face blacked out with soot, and all the hair on his head scorched off, Vlad King stomped into the room as Aizawa approached, dragging Deku behind him. Heat curled from the arms still molded into a plasma cannon, and he threw Deku into a chair and uttered, "Eeny, meeny, miny, moa." Momona yelled back, "1B is better than you losers," as Vlad King gestured to each student, pausing just before the final syllable and pointing at Deku. The teacher swallowed a grimace, pointed at Monoma, and seized him by the collar. Glaring at the newcomer, Aizawa remarked, "I knew I shouldn't have given him that free transfer." Many of the students wore the clothes with disgusted expressions, and Aizawa frowned at the gathered students, telling them that if they wanted to become heroes, they would have to face much more than a little BO. Aizawa threw a baseball at Midoriya, saying, "Throw this as far as you can without leaving the circle. Lowest score gets expelled." "What? Hold on." Over the general indignation of the class, Mina yelled, "How is that fair? There are 6 additional events, it's entirely equitable. That isn't the purpose. If I hear more complaining, it'll be 2 people going home." That instantly sped up the lesson. Aizawa twitched an eye at the seeming waste of time as Midoriya entered the circle and gazed out at the open field. "Sometime today, will you throw that baseball? We're still working on calculations to optimize the baseball's trajectory's distance. At roughly 46, 48, 47, 69 hours, etc. You need to give him a time limit or he'll be there all day," sneered Katsuki. "Great, a special needs student," Aizawa mumbled to himself, letting out an inward groan. "You have 60 seconds. When did you start?" "Since the moment I entered the circle." "From now." Aizawa's teeth twitched as Midoriya bit off his own pinky, swallowed the baseball whole, and then opened his chest to extract a metal sphere. His hand transformed into a plasma cannon, and he placed the sphere inside, sending the metal-coated baseball far into the air with a high-pitched scream of plasma crackling against metal. Aizawa couldn't even see the baseball, but he could see the plasma flick off it as the extra shot pushed it even farther away. Midoriya charged a second shot as the baseball flew well out of campus grounds. "There's no way he's hitting it again," Kaminari muttered as Midoriya got ready for a third shot. Aizawa checked his score and it shot up even faster, and based on the last number, it landed somewhere in Europe, ideally without killing anyone. A third shot rang out, and it disappeared over the horizon. "Bakugo, you're up next." "How much did he score?" Katsuki growled. "Focus on your own performance." "All right, I'll simply launch it into space." With a great wind-up, Katsuki yelled, "Die!" after working himself into a sweat, gathering everything in his hands, and slathering the baseball with it. The hot-headed teen was engulfed in a tremendous conflagration, and as the smoke cleared, pieces of blackened baseball rained down, and Aizawa winced as his ears were once again subjected to excessive noise. "You're not getting another one. Like I need a pity throw," smiled Katsuki. "That had to defeat Deku, I know." Aizawa chose not to let him know that he didn't even receive a score because the tracker was destroyed. "Yaoyorozu, you're up next." Aizawa covered his ears and moaned as she withdrew a cannon from her chest. Aizawa faced a dilemma. On the one hand, reason told him that he should push his students to the limit in order to gain a deeper understanding of their quirks and mindsets. However, it was 10 minutes past sunset, the majority of his students had left hours earlier, and Midoriya and Yaoyorozu were still running laps around the school. Well, she was riding the Segway she had built after her scooter ran out of gas, and Midoriya was cruising along on treads built into his Fita, but Aizawa was barely concerned with the details at this point. Kirishima and Bakugo had stayed to watch for some reason, and then the butler arrived. Aizawa had summoned Nezu to give him a security lecture, but the rodent could barely turn down one of the school's biggest donors, so he sat erect, on his best behavior for the butler, unable to sleep a wink, and dreading the patrol he'd have in an hour. His coffee and jelly packs had run out long ago, and his scarf twitched with the severely repressed urge to strangle everyone in his vicinity. "Ponytail, kick his ass. Show that robot that humanity won't take this one lying down," Bakugo yelled. Keep him from winning. Miss Yaoyorozu, you are doing absolutely fantastic. With a graceful wave of a Yaoyorozu sign he had taken from his limousine, the butler exclaimed, I have complete faith that you will put that rapscallion of a classmate in his place. Go. Midoriya. You're the most manly person ever, Kirishima yelled. Bakugo spun around, saying, What the fuck? For what reason are you applauding the robot? Well, Yaoyorozu-san had the support of everyone else. He redirected his attention to the marathon and exclaimed, You're also very manly, Yaoyorozu. It wouldn't be manly to leave Midori bro without any support. With a look of offense, the butler said, Why, good sir, Miss Yaoyorozu is nothing of the sort. She is the picture of grace and elegance and lacks all of man's foolishness. Chillax, bro, manliness knows no gender. When her Segway sputtered to a halt, Yaoyorozu tried to make a pair of rollerblades but they failed to come out with their wheels. Despite how thin her quirk had left her, she grimaced stoically and kept running. Aizawa intervened and yelled, How much longer can you maintain that pace, Midoriya? My battery is currently at 12 hours and 47 minutes left. The net power consumption will decrease by 86% after sunrise. Yaoyorozu, do you think you can match that? No, sensei, she said, giving her classmate one final obstinate glance before caving in. I'm worn out. Exceeding your limits has its place and time. It will cause more harm than good here. Bakugo rushed over as Yaoyorozu left, saying, You're the last hope for humanity, and you're giving up? Return to the field and succeed. For your information, Aizawa yelled, the outcome of the marathon is irrelevant. Midoriya won by a significant margin. Bakugo's lunge for Midoriya gave Aizawa the justification he needed to choke someone. On the one hand, Jiru was reluctant to get involved in whatever the hell Midoriya and Bakugo were up to, but her morbid curiosity about why there were only 20 sets of heartbeats and 19 from the students and the arrhythmic, caffeine-driven stutter of Aizawa's shriveled circulatory organa overrode her instincts for self-preservation as the second day of class began. Midoriya, weird question. That is indeed a weird question, given that you haven't asked anything, Midoriya responded. Do you mind if I ask why you don't have a heart? Jiru rolled her eyes. Bakugo rushed over with a grin so intense that Jiru's instincts to fight or run kicked in, and she held her wriggling jacks in her hand to prevent Bakugo's eyes from being gouged out. He's a robot, that's why. At last, solid, unwavering proof, Bakugo roared. No one asked you. Jiru poked him in the neck. I have a heart, actually, Midoriya said, want to see? You see? Jiru inquired. Look what? Mina Wolf whistled and remarked, Damn, Midoriya, way to put on a show. Jiru felt herself perspire a lot at the sight of six-pack abs in front of her. Izuku rolled up his shirt. Koda's eyes rolled into the back of his head as he tipped sideways. Tokiyami muttered something about madness and darkness. Ochako threw up more rainbows, and Izuku plunged a scalpel into his chest, sending the classroom into a sudden and precipitous freefall. This is my heart. Midoriya reached inside and took out a small boxy machine with clear tubing on either end, while Jiru fought back her own hysteria as Izuku peeled back the skin over his chest. It made no sound when Jiru listened to it. Is it beating? Not right now. Because blood is what carries the components I break down and the nanomachines that make them in my bloodstream. I only circulate blood when I need to reconstruct parts of my body. Look, he even has nanomachines, Bakugo roared. Isn't that his quirk? I don't understand the fuss, Todoroki said, apathetically glancing at Midoriya's exposed chest. I assume that's the abdomen? Jiru pointed to a large, boxy container and asked. Yes. Everything inside is burned, and any metals that are left are absorbed into my blood. He indicated a metal cylinder with light panels along the side, indicating that he had full charge, connected to bundles of wires running across his body. It also has thermal vents to power the battery back here, if I consume anything that can undergo an exothermic reaction. Wait, hold on, Zero said. Is this just a fancy way of explaining in detail how your body functions without coming across as forced and fake? Cementoss, the wall broke again, Nezu said over the intercom as a sharp crack of bricks shattered the room. Which one do you know? Cementoss groaned from down the hall. Why must I constantly fix it? Aizawa, who was already done with life, put on some industrial-grade earplugs, wore noise-canceling headphones over those, and buried himself so deep in his sleeping bag that it would take a spelunking crew weeks to find him. 1A erupted in a clamor of shouts when Aizawa announced that they would be choosing their representatives. A full election cycle followed Ida's call for a democratic vote, during which hats and flags were handed out, campaign speeches were given, and babies were kissed. Iida then took the polls and counted the votes, saying, "First, we have Yaoyorozu as president with 18 votes." "What?" roared Bakugo. "How did Ponytail get that many votes?" Sweating uncomfortably, Kaminari concealed a hand in his pocket. "Oh, she makes a very compelling argument about, confiscating the ill-gotten capital of the bourgeoisie and disseminating it among the proletariat." Bakugo glanced at Kaminari's swollen pockets before interrupting, "She's not a communist, you moron. She's richer than—" His hand flew inside and emerged full of bills. "She bribed you." No. That's just my lunch money." Bakugo discovered more cash wads as he stalked around the room. "Did you bribe the whole school, Ponytail?" Yaoyorozu looked at him puzzledly. "Isn't that how elections work?" Iida gave her a fierce look. "My word, I can hardly believe the scandal. Bribing the constituents. It goes against the very spirit of this school." Juru stated bluntly, "Well, either she bribed you too, or you're glad to see us." Iida hung his head in embarrassment, his own pockets stuffed full of filthy cash. "Paragon of virtue that I am, even I fell victim to the wiles of capitalism, for shame." Bakugo complained, "Well, at least the robot didn't win. Last thing we need are robots in charge of the government. And for vice president, we have Midoriya with 2 votes." Bakugo turned slowly in Midoriya's direction, and a bone-chilling silence descended upon the room. "Of course," Bakugo said slowly, a hint of hysteria in his voice. "That's your game, isn't it? Have the pretty rich girl be your puppet while you pull the strings from behind the scenes, and when the time's right, kill her off and take power for yourself. Well, it won't work. I've seen right through your plan, and I'll defy you and your false regime with my dying breath." "Hold on," said Ochako. "Bakugo didn't vote for Yaoyorozu or Midoriya, right?" "Correct. It would appear there is 1 vote for Bakugo as well." "That makes 21 votes, right?" Flustered, Iida glanced down at the stacks of ballots. "Why, that can't possibly be right. I triple-checked. How could I have failed democracy so thoroughly?" The shadow of Tokiyami laughed. The sentient quirk held up paper and pen, and the class turned. "I voted for Midoriya because I thought it would be funny, and it is." Bakugo roared as he sprang for the shadow and collided with the wall. As he watched the entire situation unfold on camera from his office, Nezu remarked, "I love democracy." An hour following the announcement that All Might had been hired by UA had made it to the media, news teams from all over the nation hurried to the gates of the UA. Reporters crowded the streets for blocks, drooling over the smallest hint of something worthy of the news. After learning of the media hysteria, Yaoyorozu invited her classmates to ride in her limousine. The 1A students savored a brunch of cured hams, pricey cheeses, and delectable fruit preserves with toasted bread slices while her butler recklessly drove over people and cameras. As she shoved as much food as she could into her cheeks, Ochako remarked, "Too bad Izuku isn't here with us." "Yeah, too bad," replying Momo. "I couldn't get a hold of him." The butler said in a low voice, "I'd get to run over more reporters that way." "Miss Yaoyorozu," he said, "it would be no trouble to swing by his residence." No need, I imagine he has already made it to school." "Yaoyorozu-san, you are correct," Iida exclaimed. He lifted his glass of orange juice and exclaimed, "To our class representatives. Their diligence serves as an example for all of us. Such diligence from him. He truly is worthy of the position as vice president." The students exclaimed, "To the reps," as the elegant dining and roomy limousine lifted their spirits. Izuku, meanwhile, pushed and trampled his way through the reporters, occasionally taking a bite out of the cameras as he went. Reporters grabbed his gray uniform as soon as he arrived at the gates. "You're a UA student, right? What can you tell us about All Might?" Izuku turned to face the journalists. "All Might is 220 centimeters tall and weighs 255 kilograms. He has blonde hair, blue eyes, and his birthday is July 10th. That's nice and all, but what about—" Izuku rambled on over their objections. "His blood type is a positive. He was born in Tokyo and attended UA High School, though records of his other primary education aren't publicly available. Could you please just tell us? He went to Harvard University, where he earned a bachelor's in accounting. He then started the All Might Agency, situated on Yokohama Street in Tokyo." Hours passed during Izuku's boring talk, which covered everything from his favorite foods and drinks to every villain he had apprehended to every life he had saved, as well as a ton of other uninteresting facts to make your eyes glaze over. The reporters and cameramen had all fallen asleep by the time Izuku explained that he had lost a lung 5 years prior and that All Might's quirk might be inherited. Out of sheer boredom, Even the microphones and cameras had ceased recording. Izuku finished and made his way through the gate in time for homeroom. When Shigaraki realized he had forgotten to grab a class schedule, he finally woke up at dusk, walked home, and decomposed a bar stool in his rage. With a sigh, Kurogiri stooped to retrieve the schedule. "Hey Mina-chan?" "Yeah, Kaminari-san? We're dead?" Mina shoved her partner's shoulder in a playful manner. "We'll be fine. You have electricity and I have acid. We'll be awesome at this. You remember that laser thing from yesterday? Imagine that ripping this building apart." Mina's pink skin made her blanch, a remarkable accomplishment. "We're dead." Footsteps, far away at first but getting louder by the second, reverberated throughout the building. Acid dripped from Mina's shaking fingers, and sparks crackled across Kaminari's skin as he shook in fear. Izuku entered the space. 1 billion-volt indiscriminate shock, exclaimed Kaminari. Kaminari erupted in electricity, but the high-voltage torrent flowed through Izuku without incident and dissolved in the concrete beneath him. Kaminari staggered forward, staring drowsily at Izuku with a silly look on his face. "What are you looking at me funny for? I bet I could knock your lights out," Kaminari said in a slurred voice. Kaminari delivered a swaying blow, but Izuku remained motionless. They crashed into Izuku's face, cracking his knuckles. "Wow, I didn't know I could bend my fingers that way," Kaminari exclaimed, staring stupidly at his crooked fingers. "I think we should count Kaminari Shonen as out. Medical bots, please take him to Recovery Girl," All Might said over the intercom. A stretcher was carried in by 2 robots. One attempted to catch Kaminari while the other struck him over the head with a rolling pin. Kaminari thumped to the ground after completely missing the stretcher. With a shrug, the robots put him on the stretcher and hurried out the door. Mina swallowed as she stood in front of the bomb. "Any chance you could take it easy on me?" Izuku's head cocked. "Of course. I will defeat you as swiftly as possible, so you don't have to struggle so much." And Mina moaned, "Greata. Well then, acid attack." Izuku leapt aside as soon as the viscous glob of acid flew in his direction. Mina continued to throw, splattering white sludge all over the room. Warning: caustic chemicals present, initiating escape plan Alpha. After reversing direction, Izuku ran directly through a concrete wall and jumped out the window. Mina ran up to the broken window, not believing what she was seeing, and saw Izuku dash through the perimeter gate of UA. Mina cheered and jumped up. "Woohoo! Took out the strongest student in the class. How do you like them apples?" She turned when she heard a sharp crackle and a static hum. The bomb was circled by a green lightsaber. It dropped through the floor. Mineta smiled and tapped the bomb with his free hand while brandishing a lightsaber. With his gaze fixed on the battle, Katsuki gazed speculatively at the acid as it ate its way down to the building's foundations. Then he started laughing uncontrollably. Zero said, All Might Sensei, I think something's wrong with him." Katsuki yelled, "Give me some acid, raccoon eyes," while he was chasing Mina around the classroom. "What do I look like, a cow? Get that bucket away from me." Bakugo-san," replied Yaoyorozu, "I don't think it's very safe storing a strong acid in metal. There's a high chance it would cause a reaction." "That's the point, Ponytail." Mina and Bakugo ran to their seats as soon as the door opened. The stony-faced teenager sat motionless, hoping the teacher wouldn't notice him if he didn't move, even though the bucket Bakugo had been carrying rattled around as it settled on Koda's head. Aizawa yelled, "Your CQC was atrocious yesterday. Get geared up, you'll be running hand-to-hand drills for the next 2 hours." They all ran to the door. With his bucket still atop his head, Koda smashed into a wall and staggered after the others. Aizawa muttered to himself and scurried back in his sleeping bag when the classroom was at last empty. The class formed pairs under Ectoplasm's watchful eye. Bakugo immediately headed for Mina. Mina deflected a blow. "I'm not giving you any acid. It's for the fate of humanity. I'm not letting you prank Midoriya. My acid's too dangerous for that." "Who said anything about a prank?" Mina was pinned to the ground after Bakugo pulled her legs out from under her. Grabbing an arm, he ran his hand along the wrist. "What the A are you trying to milk my arms? There has to be a way to get it out," Bakugo whispered. "Maybe like this?" Just enough to make Mina wince, he bent her wrist back. Mina twisted beneath him, releasing an arm, and struck him in the nose. Cradling his bleeding nose, Katsuki said, "Thief ithneth ofer," before heading to Recovery Girl's office. "Ooga booga," was yelled by a figure in a huge green mask as Mina left the school at the end of the day. With a shriek, Mina threw acid at the figure out of instinct. Katsuki scooped some of the acid into a jar as it ate through the mask. Yes. Katsuki exclaimed while he held the jar above his head. At long last, I can finally rid the world of the robot menace. Victory is mine. I've got a jar of acid, guess what's inside it? Katsuki laughed hysterically and ran down the street. Mina stared after him, considered telling him that even glass couldn't contain her acid, then shrugged and continued on her way. Katsuki slept with the jar cradled in his arms that night, fearing the robots would steal his secret weapon. The smell of burned fabric greeted him when he awoke the following morning. There was a hole in the bottom of the jar. In addition to his bed, the floor, the downstairs kitchen counter, the water heater, one of all for one's underground safe houses, and 3 more miles of bedrock had all been eroded by the acid. His mother looked up at him and yelled, "Katsuki," as he gazed down the hole. "USJ! USJ!" shouted the 1A students. "I can't believe we're going to Universal Studios Japan." As they observed students packing into the bus, 13 glanced at Aizawa. "You didn't tell them where we're actually going." They leapt to their own conclusions. It felt illogical to waste time correcting them when they would see the truth soon enough. 13 trembled. "Boy, am I glad you weren't teaching when I was in high school." When Midoriya entered the bus, it lurched sideways. Every step he took caused the wheels to bounce up and down. 13 inquired, "How much does he weigh?" "According to Aizawa, I suspect it varies based on comedic value," she said. An ear-splitting shriek erupted from the back bumper as 13 pulled the bus out of the parking lot. Before Momo gave her a pair of noise-canceling headphones, Jiro wrapped Ojiro's tail around her ears. Wrapping his scarf around his ears, Aizawa looked into the noise's origin. At the very back of the bus was where Midoriya sat. Sparks flew up through the rear window each time 13 touched the gas. "Midoriya, move up a few seats." The sparks ceased as the rear bumper rose off the ground. The bus sagged to the side as soon as he took a seat next to the window. Shoji and Sato fell to the right, caught off balance by the shifting weight of the bus. More students fell in the direction of Midoriya as the bus pitched sideways. "Everyone, left side of the bus," Aizawa yelled, flinging himself in the direction of the side that was gradually rising. Mineta stuck himself to the side with his hairballs, and Kirishima hardened up and threw himself halfway out a window. Regretfully, Izuku moved to the left side of the bus as well. The right wheels lifted into the air while the left wheels slammed onto the pavement. As gravity attempted to drag 13 from her seat, she clung frantically to the steering wheel. Ochako floated around the bus like an anti-gravity pinball, containing a new batch of rainbow vomit. Asui struggled forward with her tongue, and Aizawa pulled himself to the right side with his scarf. Aizawa yelled over the chaos, "Midoriya, stand exactly in the center of the bus." Izuku stood in the aisle as the left wheels landed. Even though the bus was absurdly close to the ground, they didn't hear any scraping noises. When the bus eventually stabilized, the entire class exhaled in relief. "Midoriya, mind explaining why you're so heavy?" "I ate a big breakfast this morning, so I would have more material for the unforeseen simulation joint." Kaminari yelled in desperation, "Wait, that's what USJ means." They were all silenced by a loud groaning sound as groans of agony reverberated throughout the bus. The bus's front and rear abruptly snapped twice in quick succession. 4 tires rolled away on the road as the entire chassis lurched downward. Shigaraki frowned at his watch at the USJ. "Stupid loading times. What is this, a PS4? Shigaraki remarked, "You're late," as soon as everyone arrived. "And All Might's not here. All respect to the programmers, but whoever coded your NPC behavior should be fired." "Who are you?" yelled Aizawa, "and why are you here?" "I had this whole villain monologue thing planned out, but we're behind schedule. Kurogiri, do the thing." "What thing?" inquired Kurogiri. Shigaraki gave him a fierce look. "We went over this. Just make the portals already." "Understood, sir." There was a portal beneath Shigaraki's feet. He yelled, "Wrong lever," as he fell through. "Always wanted to do that," speculated Kurogiri. He said, "Right, you're still here. Let's fix that," as he glanced up at the heroes. Under everyone's feet, holes appeared. Ochako floated away, Siro grabbed her with his tape, and Iida ran away just in time. Izuku and most of the others fell through. Izuku saw a ship appear beneath him. He tore through the metal like tissue paper as he fell through the deck, past the engine block, and through the hull. A villain with a shark face darted at him as he sank toward the bottom. The villain got to him before Suyu, who was swimming frantically after him. He was bitten in the torso by the villain. A trail of red marked the escaping villain's path as all of his teeth snapped off. Izuku was much too heavy for Tsuyu to move, despite her best efforts to pull her. Tsuyu swam up to the enormous's rapidly sinking deck as her oxygen ran out. The water pressure continued to push Minetta's balls away as he desperately attempted to patch the hull with them. Tsuyu picked up a stray violin and began to play as he saw the boat sinking and the villains closing in. "What do you think this is, the Titanic?" Minetta yelled as she looked up. "Well, what else can we do? At least let me draw you like one of those French girls." Tsuyu gave him a tongue slap. "I don't like the French. They ate one of my cousins." The ship swayed sideways. When Tsuyu wriggled out of Minetta's grasp, Minetta screamed and gripped at him, only to emerge covered in mucus. The ship began to sink even more quickly as crunching noises came from the bottom. "The villains are coming. We're doomed." "Yeah, probably. Why are you so calm? I'm about to die a virgin." The deck disappeared under the water. But the sinking ceased as soon as they were knee-deep. Izuku's face peered out from the prow of a new ship as the deck rose, now green. "For Izuku, I am a boat now. That's nice. Could you get us back to dry land?" "They're getting away. Stop them," yelled the villains as they heard all of this. They hurried over to the boat's rear. The boat's rear hurried in their direction. The stern slapped the villains into the air while they screamed. "Oops," Izuku uttered, installed the engine throttle backwards. From the cockpit in Izuku's chest, Minetta commanded, "You're all the short ones now," as he maneuvered Izuku's enormous body through the crowds of villains. "Not so funny now, is it?" Tsuyu and Ojiro observed the carnage while sitting in front of a hedgerow. "Why is Minetta piloting Izuku's body?" inquired Ojiro. "He was the only one small enough to fit." "Let me rephrase that. Why is Izuku a giant mecha with Minetta in his chest?" One of Izuku's arms crackled with electricity, and Minetta said, "I wonder what this button does." The screams of the villains almost overpowered Minetta's wild laughter and exclamations of unlimited power. "Well," Tsuyu replied, "once Izuku landed on the beach, we saw that Aizawa-sensei needed help taking out the villains. I didn't know that boat in the flood zone worked." Izuku was the boat. Ojiro paused to stare at Izuku. The rockets flew around Izuku as his shoulders opened. Like bowling pins, villains flew. "Right," said Ojiro. "That's a thing Izuku's quirk does. Why was he a boat?" Tsuyu gave him a sardonic look that conveyed her indifference to the ongoing mayhem. "He crashed through the boat, ate it, and became the boat. So, we thought about how we could help Aizawa-sensei. Minetta said Izuku could do it. Izuku said he couldn't harm anyone, since it went against his prime directives." In response to Ojiro's perplexed look, his words, "Not mine." "Right. So, he can't harm villains, but he can allow them to come to harm. How does that work?" Tsuyu gave a shrug. "I read Asimov. A flash of bright green sliced through the scenery. A plasma beam carved a long furrow into the ground, sending debris and villains flying." Ojiro parted his lips, then quickly closed them. "Does Minetta have complete control over Izuku?" he inquired instead. "I would assume so. Why? I don't think that's a good idea." The robot came to a complete halt. Minetta said to Izuku, "Hey, let me get a closer look. Just a little nudge on her skirt, and we'll have the perfect view." Izuku remained motionless. "Protocol 2, uphold the mission. Our mission is to aid Aizawa-sensei, not acquire additional visual data on the villains." When Tsuyu told Ojiro, Protocol 1 was linked with the pilot. At last, Shigaraki had had enough of seeing his cannon fodder trampled underfoot by a teenager with a hide disability. Izuku was sent flying after being punched in the chest by a purple blur. Izuku got up with a stutter. Izuku opened his chest, seized Minetta, and threw him toward the door, saying, "Chassis of insufficient strength to deter current threat. Initiating Protocol 3, protect the pilot." Taking hold of Izuku's two arms, the Nomu tugged. The smaller body of Izuku dropped out of the mech's spine as the steel chassis split in two. Asking, "Can you please take me to the hospital?" Aizawa lay in a pool of his own blood between Ojiro and Tsuyu. As the massive monster clawed at his head, Izuku said, "Sir, you are currently breaking the law. I must ask you to hand yourself in to the nearest local authorities." The Nomu screamed, "RRAGH," and lunged once more. Izuku used his forearm to block the subsequent swipe. The force of the blow caused said forearm to bend at a sharp angle. Izuku's body's nanomachines straightened and repaired the limb in a matter of seconds. Attempts at negotiation have failed. Attempting nonviolent pacification measures. The Nomu delivered another blow. Izuku, who was only a small portion of the monster's size, caught it by the wrist and delivered a flawless judo throw, sending it crashing to the ground. Izuku pinned both arms in place and pounced on the monster's back. A ringtone came from Izuku's head, saying, "Pacification complete. Contacting local authorities. Error. Communications cut. Please hold while an alternate directive is devised." Being placed on hold did not sit well with the Nomu. It bucked and flung Izuku off its back, shrieking. It took hold of one of his legs, threw him, and repeatedly slammed him into the concrete. Izuku shook gravel and concrete off his back, restraining measures ineffective, attempting knockout. Izuku stretched his position as the Nomu charged. Izuku avoided a blow and struck the Nomu in the jaw with his fist. The monster was unfazed by the blow. Shigaraki mockingly said, "A scrub like you doesn't stand a chance against Nomu," from the sidelines. "Its shock absorption quirk gives it physical damage immunity." "Understood," said Izuku. "Knockout impossible, now attempting temporary incapacitation." Izuku pulled out a lightsaber and cut the Nomu's leg tendons. The damage was repaired when flesh bubbled out of the burned wounds. Shigaraki grinned broadly. "Health recovery as well, from the region quirk. It's the perfect weapon to kill All Might." "Query," said Izuku. "Villain has multiple quirks?" The response from Shigaraki was, "It was made that way. After all, villains were required by contract to describe their evil schemes and schemes." "Understood. Reclassifying threat to biological weapon. Lethal force authorized." When the Nomu punched down, Izuku leapt. Around the monster's fist, chunks of concrete exploded. Izuku swung his lightsaber through the Nomu's neck after jumping deftly on the monster's shoulder. The Nomu's head pounded on the broken concrete, and it knelt. Izuku approached Shigaraki while carrying a lightsaber that was pulsing. "Come quietly, or there will be trouble." Nomu got up. From the stump between its shoulders, a new head emerged. The Nomu seized Izuku's head, twisted it, and yanked it off his shoulders before he could turn. Izuku fell to the ground with a crumple. Tsuyu ran to her feet and exclaimed, "Izuku!" But Ojiro stopped her. "Well, that was fun. Which kid should we kill next?" Izuku had a glowing hand. The body without a head stumbled awkwardly to its feet. A dazzling beam of plasma engulfed the monster as it rotated its arm until it was aimed at the Nomu. The Nomu's charred ankles and feet, which were all that remained, did not grow back. The doors of the USJ slammed open, and Izuku's body, now without power, fell again. Unexpectedly, Yaoyorozu landed on a sofa atop a mountain. From behind, 5 villains glared at her. When Yaoyorozu pulled a rocket launcher out of her cleavage, 5 villains fled in a scream. As Todoroki surveyed his surroundings, flames loomed around him. As they surrounded him, the villains grinned, probably thinking that the flames had weakened his ice, but they had actually strengthened it. "This is fine," said Todoroki. The ground, the villains, and the flames themselves all froze solid with a wave of his hand. Sato snorted a tube of sugar while surrounded by villains. His eyes took on a manic, bloodshot gleam, and his muscles rippled. "Woo! Say hello to my little friend." Kirishima said, "Hello, I'm Kirishima," as Sato lifted him above his head. While Sato played whack-a-mole, the villains scampered. As Shoji looked around, a villain came up behind him and cut off one of his limbs. Shoji gazed at the stump that was bleeding. He said, "Oh no," in a deadpan tone. "Anyway-sa." 2 arms emerged from the stump, seized the villain, and twisted him into a pretzel. A villain gazed longingly at a butterfly that drifted in his direction. "Is this a weapon?" He was cuffed upside down by his partner. "Don't be stupid, that's a butterfly." They were both bludgeoned over the head by the butterfly that changed into a club. Koda emerged from behind a rock and expressed gratitude to the Butterfly Winged Club for assisting him with its quirk. Mina threw acid behind her and screamed. "My eyes!" screamed a villain as he scurried off, tripping and hitting his knee on a rock. "My leg!" Standing over a villain, Zero declared, "I sawed this boat in half to demonstrate the power of my tape." "What boat?" exclaimed the villain. "The boat I would have if you guys dumped me in the flood zone, but no, you had to put me with a bunch of crumbling buildings. So instead, I'll cut you in half. You're about the right size for a boat." "That's really hurtful," the fat villain sobbed. Zero used a second villain to cut the first one in half, then used his tape to reassemble them. They were as good as new except for the occasional twitch of their eyes and the loss of sensation in their left arm. Bakugo knocked out a villain's front teeth by stomping on his head, causing an orthodontist 10 miles away to cry uncontrollably. He looked around the room. looking for another victim and admiring the other villains scattered around in various states of physical impairment. Any villains nearby better come fight me. I'll go easy on you. After witnessing his friends being severely beaten, a chameleon villain broke out in a cold sweat. They had barely reached the halfway point when Bakugo met his gaze. Bakugo strode forward, his hands rippling with explosions. So, you have chosen death. The ruins zone reverberated with the villain's cries. Kurogiri immediately noped the hell out of there and took Shigaraki with him when All Might appeared, his face contorted into a visage of murderous rage at the sight of his headless successor. Now that he had lost all chance to express his rage, All Might punched the ground so forcefully that it registered on seismographs all over the world. I knew I shouldn't have stopped to help hold that man's ladder while he painted his front porch. Seriously? Aizawa asked feebly, still bleeding out. That's why you were late? It was a very big porch. Katsuki walked casually by the mountains of charred Nomu feet and unconscious villains. As he lifted Izuku's head by its twisted metal neck stump, he remarked, "Alas, poor Deku. I knew him, All Might, a machine of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy." All Might stared at him numbly and asked, "What are you doing?" Quoting Hamlet. "What, you think I don't read or something?" All Might lost his temper. "Your classmate's dead and you're making jokes." Izuku's eyes glowed brightly. "I'm not dead." At him, All Might gaped. "What?" "Nothing," said Katsuki. "Just ignore it." Izuku said, "Ooh, are you doing a Monty Python bit too?" Katsuki mumbled, "Well, now that you ruined it." "Wait," All Might said, "he's not dead?" "Of course not," sneered Katsuki. "He's a robot. His mom will put him back together by tomorrow morning. Believe me, I tried." "Oh, should I take him back home then?" "Nah, she'll come pick him up anyways." A literal light bulb appeared over Katsuki's head, courtesy of Yaoyorozu's cleavage. "Actually, you should bring him home. Maybe that way, you'll see the truth as well." All Might gathered his broken proto-copyright ga copyright into his arms, refusing to question the insane gleam in Katsuki's eye. He ended up on Inko's front step after a single run across the city, and as soon as he entered, he exploded into a cloud of steam. "So," All Might replied, "is Izuku going to be alright? Bakugo mentioned you could fix him?" The statement, "It's his quirk," was made by Inko without hesitation. His body will regenerate if supplied with enough materials to work with. Back when Izuku was 7, he got in a nasty accident. They never did find both his arms. He was right as rain the next day. "Oh," All Might chuckled and exclaimed. The way Katsuki said it, he made it sound like Izuku was a robot. I almost believed him, what with the talking head and all that. Phew. Of course it's a quirk. All right, I better get back to the school. The door secured itself with a bolt. As Inko sat at the table and poured herself a cup of tea, darkness loomed in the kitchen. "Actually," Inko replied, "before you go, would you mind explaining how you let my son get injured to such a degree?" All for One was immediately demoted to the third scariest person in Toshinori's eyes. After putting the new arm together, Inko Midoriya checked its circuits. She clamped it on after aligning the hollow appendage with the socket in Izuku's shoulder, confident that she had correctly welded the circuits. Nanofluid filled the polymer skin, causing it to swell. Inko inspected the new body and then pressed a button on her computer. Izuku sat up, and his eyelids fluttered open. Izuku declared, "I am home," while surveying the workshop. The workbenches were decorated with circuit components and prototype weapons. Plans for Izuku's new arm appeared on a big screen. "Good morning, Izuku. How do you feel?" Izuku showed off his newly acquired arms and legs. "Fully functional. These are a new design. I couldn't make you any stronger, so I made you faster instead. It's the best I could do if you'll be fighting villains like the Nomu." Izuku got to his feet and extended his limbs. Izuku adjusted his new body by working his way up, twisting his back, curling his arms, flexing his shoulders, and rotating his hips. No faults detected. Everything is fully operational. Good. Are you hungry? My battery is still low. Breakfast would help replenish it. Before opening the door to her workshop, Inko looked at the camera. She has ensured that no one has seen her workshop since the incident 7 years ago. The door swung outward with a heavy creaking sound as the bolts clattered open. Izuku chopped the vegetables while Inko rinsed the rice. Leeks and mushrooms were quickly cut into thin slivers by his knife. Inko beat the eggs over the flame on the stovetop after Izuku cracked them. Inko tossed the 2 omelets onto rice beds with a flick of her wrist. Izuku spread a bottle of hot mayo over the fluffy omelets in even zigzags. "How is it?" Inko inquired as they nibbled on the omelets at the kitchen table. Izuku used a napkin to wipe his mouth after swallowing. The omelets are of optimal fluffiness, the rice has the correct texture, and the spices are in their proper ratios. I'm glad you like them. Izuku put down his fork midway through his breakfast. Hey mom, what would happen if the core processors in my head were damaged beyond repair? The question caught Inko completely off guard. She contemplated telling him about the basement backup servers. Why do you ask? The Nomu had sufficient strength to crush my processors. Before that, I had not considered the possibility that I could suffer enough damage to render my mental processes non-functional. I had failed my directive as a hero. Had All Might not Arrivada. Izuku's hand was touched by Inko as she reached across the table. Sweetie, do you still want to be a hero? Izuku met her eyes directly. I do not want Kachan or my other classmates to become non-functional. I will become a better hero. Inko got up from her chair and embraced her son. Then I'll make sure you have whatever you need to be the best hero there is. Izuku pushed Kaminari away with just enough force to allow him to escape the massive projectile that was hurtling out of the building when an explosion blew the doors of the support department open. Because of the projectile's enormous chest, it knocked Izuku backwards but did less physical damage than he had anticipated. Izuku looked up into cross-haired, yellow eyes as the smoke cleared. She pinched the skin on his chest just as he was figuring out how precise Hatsume's quirk was. Polymer weave, with synthetic hairs embedded in the material. Almost indistinguishable from human skin. She took hold of his hands and bent one finger, closely observing each movement like a hawk. Thin metal exoskeleton, solid, but bends seamlessly with every movement. Nanobots, maybe? She looked into Izuku's eyes and pried his eyelids apart even more. The level of detail on the optical lenses, iris striation, the pupils dilate with additional light. Eyes even twitch under strain. Mei smiled at him and sat up. When Kaminari saw her half-singed uniform, which appeared to be ready to come off in the slightest breeze, her mouth fell open. Hatsume uttered the words, "You are the most gorgeous baby I have ever seen, who made you?" Kaminari choked on his own tongue off to the side. Izuku tilted his head sideways. "I have never considered it. I suppose that would be my mother." Hatsume took hold of his shoulders. "How soon can I meet her?" As Kaminari had a fit of coughing, Izuku looked at his mother's calendar. Would after school tomorrow be sufficiently soon enough? Hatsume seized his arms, hauled him to his feet, and twirled him in a circle. "Oh yes, we're going to make so many beautiful babies together," she exclaimed, laughing uncontrollably. The campus of UA was rocked by a loud crack of thunder. Smoking a little from his unexpected outburst, Kaminari fell on his face and pitched forward. "That wasn't one of my babies, right?" Hatsume asked, gazing down at Kaminari's smoking corpse. The following day, while sipping his favorite tea, Nezu perused his security feed and observed both well-known politicians and infamous villains going about their everyday lives. He stopped by Inko Midoriya's house on a whim. His teacup broke on the ground. Even Nezu's quirk-enhanced mind was unable to understand the blueprints of the devices that Inko Midoriya and Mei Hatsume were excitedly discussing at the dining room table. "Powerloader, how soon could you have a self-sufficient space station ready?" Nezu asked, dialing a number. "Depends. What do you need on board?" "Myself, Aizawa's scarf, a chessboard, and 500 years worth of tea." "Hama, I have a project in storage I could repurpose. It would be ready in about 4 months." Nezu looked at the video. Weapons with payloads strong enough to destroy Japan were being welded together by Hatsume and Inko. "Do it in 3, please." "Greetings to Class 1A, Midnight said. "Welcome to Modern Art Studies. Before we talk about art and its impact on the hero industry, we're going to make art. After all, there's no better way to learn than by doing. And since this is a hero school, we'll have a hero model." Mineta had the start of a nosebleed, and Kaminari and Siro both wiped drool dribbles from their chins. To Mina and Hagakuri's groans, Midnight remarked, "Now, unfortunately, Aizawa and Hisashi both declined to be models, so I'll be the model instead." Midnight pulled off her top layer of clothes at that announcement. Despite being revealing, Midnight's stripper-style costume was devoid of any lingerie underneath. Ida's hand sprang upward. "Midnight-sensei, this is highly appropriate and a monumental breach in etiquette. I insist that you dress yourself at once." "Really?" Midnight strolled over, allowing her entire body to sway sensuously. Ida was given a generous view of her cleavage as she pressed her chest into his face, asking, "And what if some lady villain threw off her clothes to distract some innocent hero? It'd be a shame if you got performance issues your first time doing the deed." Ida didn't look down at all. I would never fall for such base trickery. My willpower is absolute. With a sly smile, Midnight said, then you don't have any problem with my current state of dress, right? Trapped by his own words, Iida shook his head helplessly while Midnight stooped to retrieve a pencil. Izuku put his paper in his mouth as the others began to sketch. The paper slid out of a hole in Izuku's chest, making the choppy, whirring sounds of a printer. Izuku spit out the remainder of the paper halfway through, making a strangled chuffing sound. Low toner, said Izuku. He reinserted the paper after consuming 12 ink cartridges. Izuku pulled out the crumpled sheet as soon as he heard the crumpling sound of paper coming from his mouth. Izuku transformed his hand into a plasma gun, spat out all the toner, and fired at his desk. Midnight's image burned itself into the paper, tinted green. I have switched to laserjet as my default image duplication method, Izuku made known. Midnight locked the door toward the end. Why don't we spice this up a bit? After all, you need to get the full art experience, Midnight said with a cunning smile. When Aizawa burst through the window, she had one finger beneath her bra strap. Aizawa used a spray bottle to spritz Midnight in the face. I let you get away with your ludicrous lesson plan because you had a logical point. Now, you're going too far. Midnight covered her face and squawked, what? It's just a bit of harmless fun. Minetta's desk was indicated by Aizawa. Blood spurted from the purple midget's nose, and he lay twitching in the pool. With a sigh, Midnight dressed herself. Fine. Class dismissed. Present Mike yelled, "Hello everybody," in a thicker than mocha English accent at Class 1A. And W are come to English 101 U. Let's hear a big plus ultra out of you arranged by. Everyone in the class stared at Izuku's accent, which sounded British enough to make a proper cup of tea, as she said, changing default language to English. Plus ultra, while the rest of the class feebly echoed, plus ultra, with varying degrees of butchery of the foreign language. No, no, exclaimed Present Mike. Your sound of speaking is arranged by wrong you. Try to speak it again with more careful in your future try. Plus ultra, I reckon? The moonshine-slicked Western accent would have made Clint Eastwood cry. You are needing to speak with more query. Izuku's voice could have subdued an alligator and held it up to the camera. Plus ultra, mate? Crosser, but the mark is stir far away from here. I see. Changing default language to English U. Plus ultra. Present Mike exclaimed, very much good, with joy. Now, let us be speaking about fixing a verb to mean what you mean in English. Your English was very impressive. Are you really able to do all of those accents? Yaoyorozu whispered to Izuku as Present Mike joyfully demonstrated to the class how to bleed out, skin, gut, and clean every single bit of the English language until it looked like a Blu-ray collection of awful 90s anime dubs thrown into a blender. I have access to a full lexicon of documented accents for every language. Are you able to do the same? Yaoyorozu gave a headshake. My tutor taught me English, but I can't do any of those accents. How'd you learn to do them all? Learn. I have always had this functionality. Aoyama inclined toward the discussion. Ah, merci. I see how it is. Your quirk, most magnifique. Non. You can copy any voice you desire with it. Très bien. Frana section ice da copyright tech de copyright. Changer la langue par da copyright faux en frana section ice. Je pense que vous avez raison sur votre de copyright aurier selon lequel mon alter permet un transfert de langue facile. Mon cerveau agit un peu comme une base de données copyright s et me permet d'avoir copyright sur n'importe quelle langue que je pourrais avoir besoin de parler. Izuku's French rattled into one ear and flew out the other, leaving not the smallest sliver of understanding clinging to the gray matter between them, and Aoyama began to perspire uneasily. Oui, yes, I understood all that you just said. Muy bien. Aspa plus or minus ol detectado. Cambio de idioma predeterminado en aspa plus or minus ol. Esta es seguro de haber entendido? Podrá repetirme en voz alta en el idioma que Elijah si necesita ayuda. Yes, quite, but I do believe that we should be paying attention to the lecture, non? Aoyama said, laughing nervously, unsure of what to do. Present Mike yelled back at the group, hey, no speaking of the Japanese in the English classroom, after noticing that his students were ignoring him. Snipe clicked his heels on the floor and tipped his hat, saying, howdy y'all, and welcome to Western Japanese History 101. Your book's on the shelf over there. Had a special text pre-ordered. Izuku brought his book along with the others. The Japanese flag was held over the head of a cowboy on a rearing horse on the cover. Tuco, Blondie, and Angel are the 3 Ronin that our story starts with, Snipe explained to the class. Blondie and Tuco used to hand each other in for their bounties and spring each other loose, before Blondie left Tuco for dead out in a desert. I had no idea that Japan had a desert, exclaimed Mina. It was a long time ago, Snipe hurriedly answered. They planted rice there. Anyways, Tuco survived, captured Blondie and left him in the same desert. A runaway carriage carrying Nobunaga's retainers stumbled into them, and a dying samurai told Tuco he knew where to find a buried stash of gold. He died before Tuco could help him, but Blondie said the man told him where to dig before he died. Wait, why would they have guns in the Sengoku period? Why wouldn't they? So, on their way to the treasure, they met a troop of samurai. Tuco pretended to be Nobunaga's, but they were Uesugi clan, so they got captured, and Angel tortured the location of the treasure out of Tuco. He knew Blondie wouldn't talk. They were personal acquaintances, so Angel hired Blondie instead. Tuco escaped, and all 3 of them met up at the graveyard. In a 3-way duel between them, Blondie slew Angel, took half the money, and left Tuco half dead with the rest. Yaoyorozu questioned, "Excuse me, but are you sure that's historically accurate? Are you questioning the academic material provided to us by the school?" Iida responded, "Surely this impeccable institution of learning couldn't make such an egregious error as buying fraudulent textbooks." Izuku turned the pages of the book. Snipe wrote the book. No PhD in history or other accreditations. The contents match many American westerns. No matches with online databases of Japanese history aside from a few names. I have asked Nezu which source of information to refer to for future inquiries. "You asked Nezu?" Snipe said in a terrified tone. Nezu called out over the intercom, "Snipe, to my office, please." Snipe ran toward the exit. A capture scarf snaked out of a ceiling vent that popped open. Snipe's hat fell off as he was pulled into the vent, pleading for mercy the entire time. The vent closed behind him as his boots brushed the ceiling. "Now what do we do?" Ojiro asked as the room went silent. The class was startled when Snipe sprang back out of the vent. Snipe struggled mightily against the cloth bindings, reaching lower and lower until his hat came into contact with his fingertips. Before the scarf pulled him back into the shaft, he picked it up and brushed it off. There was silence. Kaminari exclaimed, "Woohoo, no classwork," after a minute had passed. Mathematics. The side of any triangle is determined with the formula of a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine ca. The quadratic formula can be used to find the x-intercepts of any quadratic function. You can solve for local minimum and maximum values by finding when the derivative of the function is 0. On 100 different topics, 100 ectoplasm clones provided math notes on 100 different chalkboards. In different levels of panic, the 1A students took notes. Shoji made a writhing sea of arms to scribble notes on his back. Iida's engines roared as his arms moved fast enough to ignite his paper with every stroke of his pen. Kaminari drooled on his chin as sparks crackled out of his frazzled hair. Using her quirk, Yaoyorozu created entire paper stacks using the notes from every chalkboard. The trigonometric functions with a simple derivative proof were unceremoniously grafted to their left kidney after the contents of those papers were sadly mixed up. With the exception of his eyes darting between each clipboard, Izuku sat at the center of the storm, not moving. Bakugo occasionally stopped taking hurried notes to frown and mutter that he was up to something. And that's every maths lecture for the next 3 years. Now, here's the pop quizzes. You aren't allowed to use your notes. I hope you were paying attention. All of the ectoplasm clones said at the same time. What? There was a stack of quizzes for each clone. Each student had a mountain of math problems by the time they were distributed. You have 1 hour to finish them all. How is that fair? Yelled Mineta. What? Inquired the clones. These only took me 5 minutes, you have plenty of time. The only desk without a quiz was Izuku's. Ectoplasm himself produced another stack, much taller than the others. Izuku held up his hand as the other students sobbed aloud as they ripped through their quizzes. Excuse me, but these do not appear to be quizzes. Ectoplasm stared deadpan at Izuku. Yesterday, you found the last digit of pi, solved world hunger to the nearest millionth decimal point, determined that the answer to life, the universe, and everything was 42, and calculated the average airspeed velocity of an unladen sparrow, both African and European. There's only one way I can challenge you further. Tax exemptions. Izuku muttered calculations under his breath while nodding. The air around him became uncomfortable warm in a matter of seconds. Sparks flew out of his hair and smoke blew from his ears. He twitched his head wildly. As Izuku's brain struggled to process Ectoplasm's taxes, his voice became louder and louder, and it grew faster and faster. Izuku slammed his head against his desk after writing a number. Ectoplasm cheered as he worked the tax forms out from under him. "Ha! I get an extra 500 yen back, take that bureaucracy." Katsuki wrote in the margins of his quiz, "Robots weak against taxes." 13 said, "MFFRL MFRFRLL Merl, MMFL MFFRL MRFRFLL," beneath her heavy superhero outfit. The rest of the class scratched their heads at the incomprehensible noises and equally incomprehensible block of equations that filled the chalkboard, while Ida dutifully recorded every muffled sound. "Excuse me, 13? MFFMRFRFLL?" Ochako blushed and hesitantly said, "I know you never take off your helmet, but could you speak more clearly somehow? We can't understand you under that helmet." No one else could understand 13's comment about her microphone breaking again, so she tapped her helmet. As she removed her helmet, a light bulb glowed above her head before being drawn into a wavy black emptiness. A strong gravitational field pulled the light in the classroom in such a way that it bent visibly. Mineta shivered and said, "I'm having flashbacks to Nam." "Mineta, that is highly disrespectful of actual Vietnam War veterans. What would they care? They've all been dead for 200 years. 13 spoke once more, but half the chalk lines disappeared along with the sound. Ochako unsuccessfully attempted to inform 13 that she was still unable to hear anything. Izuku approached the front of the room and covered 13's exposed finger with his hand. From the opening came a squelching, sucking sound, similar to a plugged vacuum cleaner. When the black hole vanished, 13's true face became visible. Ochako said, "Wait, you're not a cosmic entity?" with a distressed expression. 13 looked at Izuku impatiently. "You ruined my PR campaign." "My apologies. I observed a potentially fatal anomaly and acted to prevent any casualties." With a sigh, 13 unzipped her suit. "I had this whole plan to hide my identity for years and then casually take my helmet off one day and make people excited over what I look like." "Isn't there a chance people might not care after so long?" replied Ojiro. Kaminari went on, "Or what if people haven't read the manga yet?" Ochako sulked. "Ah, I thought you were this mysterious cosmic entity. I wanted to meet one." A rift that was not intended for mortal eyes appeared as Ochako spoke. A tentacled face, whose description alone would make any reader go crazy, protruded through the interdimensional space. Unfazed, Shoji and Izuku gazed into the abyss. The others dripped blood from their eyes and spoke incoherently. "Shoji, dear," the cosmic horror said, "you forgot your lunch." Shoji gave an eye roll. "I told you, Mom, they make lunch for us." "I know, but I made this fresh from the primordial ooze. It's your favorite, isn't it?" Reluctantly, Shoji took the paper bag containing the writhing tentacles and non-Euclidean shapes. "Thanks, Mom." "You're welcome, sweetie. Have fun in school." "Izuku, kindly break the glass that says, 'In case of cosmic horrors,' and read page 53. Nezu said over the intercom after the cosmic horror had passed. As instructed, Izuku uttered the words, "Era was Uoi Tav Tegro F." "What did I miss?" Ochako asked, blinking drowsily as the class stirred. Whispering, "Good afternoon, class," Cementoss said. Without the microphone on his collar and the double-decker bus-sized speakers built into the walls, his voice would have been too low for the 1A students to hear. "Today, I would be lecturing you on the material I assigned you to read yesterday, Buddha." Nezu's voice came over the intercom just in time. "Cementoss, support lab 1C blew up again." Cementoss sighed with long suffering. "Just read while I'm gone. Maybe I'll have a few minutes to assign the next chapter when I'm done." War and Peace was dutifully opened by the students. However, most gave up reading because they found Cementoss's complaining into his microphone to be very annoying. "Not a real degree," Dad said, Cementoss complained. "Should go into the construction industry, that's where the real money is with all those villains breaking things," Dad said. "Got the hero degree with a writing certification so he'd pay tuition. Thought I got one up on him when Nezu hired me to teach literature. But what does Nezu do? He uses me as a glorified construction crew day in and day out. Hatsume blows up the lab again. Patch it up with some concrete. Najire breaks a training course. Better whip up a new one, but bigger this time." When Cementoss returned to the classroom, the majority of 1A was staring at him after he had been complaining for 20 minutes, making noises like grinding concrete for a minute, and then pouting and thinking about his career options for another 20 minutes. He moaned as he glanced down at his collar. "The mic was on, wasn't it? Kaminari responded, "You don't really do everything around here, right? I mean, light bulbs and stuff aren't concrete." The ceiling was punched by Cementoss. The light fixture changed into wet, gummy cement as he withdrew his hand. Cementoss hummed angrily, Then more concrete was exposed as he ripped at the chalkboard. He knelt on the ground and extracted a piece of gravel and lime. He said, pointing out the window, which was made of concrete. The campus grounds were immediately transformed into a full-sized apartment complex with functional amenities after a concrete mixer, which was made of 99% concrete, dropped a load of concrete outside. The person operating the mixer may have been made of concrete as well, given the chalky layer of dust covering every surface of their skin. Ochako exclaimed, "Wow," as he gazed out at the architectural marvel. "I bet you could make so much money off of building repairs." Cementoss gazed at Ochako, his eye twitching uncontrollably. With a wave of his hand, a patch of concrete turned into a stack of books. "That's it, I'm done. Read those. I'll go work on my novel." Yayorozu unlocked one. A small piece of concrete fell onto her fingers. She glanced at the cover and said, "All work and no play makes Cementoss a dull boy. Oh dear. Oh, it's The Shining. False alarm." Taking turns reading the Teaching for Dummies book from behind a podium that, regrettably, did not conceal the title from his audience, All Might alternated between assessing his students' understanding. While Mini Tensei recorded everything he said with the same religious fervor as Moses recording the Ten Commandments, the majority were staring at him blankly and in awe. All Might's chest began to burn in the middle of the lecture. He grimaced at the red splatters all over the pages of his lecture script, and pretended to clear his throat to cover up a cough. When he stopped to assist that elderly woman across the street, All Might chastised himself. Years of ingrained hero tendencies prevented him from saying no to people, even though he really ought to have left before she made him cross the same intersection 27 times. "Right," said All Might. "As I was saying, he narrowed his eyes by looking at his notes. He continued despite some of the words being obscured by blotches of blood. The first thing a hero should do is handcuff Thea wounded at the scene and clear the way for Thea Villanza to leave you." "I don't think that sounds right," Yayorozu uttered unsurely. Kaminari whispered, "This is All Might," to her. "I think he knows what he's talking about." All Might wiped perspiration from his brow, swallowed, and tasted blood. Carrying on, during press reports, heroes should endeavor to heed the audiencia kick a babies, and tell everyone to be a villaina. The space was whirling. "The air is getting thinner. There is hope for the future await," that was internal bleeding, but the hero's time is almost up. "Excuse me, I, have urgent hero business. Read the next chapter in your book." "But we don't have a book." The door was tried by All Might. "Locked." He gave a yank. "It's still locked." Yanked more forcefully. Nezu advised him to limit the amount of property damage, and he was unable to understand why Aizawa blanched at the mention of a corrective action, even though the door was made of solid concrete and might give way under a Carolina smash. "Outside the window. Try breaking the glass, which is also made of concrete, if the lock is stuck." Coughing again. "No time. Fear." At the rear of the classroom, All Might gestured, "Is that David's shield?" Then everyone turned around and asked, "Whoa, really?" Everyone may let go. As his body deflated, steam hissed. Everyone turned back around, disappointed that David's shield was not present. Under their confused stares, Toshinori, still in the hero suit, sweated while clutching the bloody book. Bakugo sneered, "Who's the toothpick?" Kirishima questioned, "Whoa, is this a magic trick? Super manly?" Iida yelled, "This is most irregular. Substitute teachers should be announced days in advance. How will this affect our curriculum?" Toshinori's throat cleared. "I'm, Yagi, All Might's secretary. He had an emergency." "Whoa, was that your quirk?" "Yes. Anyways, let's continue the lecture. Heroes should kill whenever possible, eh?" Blood spurted onto the pages as he coughed. "Is that blood? Are you dying? Is this part of the class?" Toshinori sighed as he glanced down at his ruined notes. Vlad King informed the gathered 1A students, "Your class and mine are competing today. 20 questions, and each student in the class must answer one. Whichever class wins gets a pizza party." As the class applauded, Vlad King grinned. The cheers died down when he added, "My class got 19 right." His smile grew even wider. Kaminari and Mina moaned. Pony's distorted response infuriated Vlad King, who couldn't understand how her English and Japanese could be so unintelligible. This class wouldn't perform any better, though, he ensured that. Which organelle in the human cell produces ribosomes? Yaoyorozu's hand went up. Nucleolus. Correct, said Vlad King in a friendly tone. After answering the first question, one of the class's brightest minds was already eliminated. Let's move on to the other one. What are 3 differences that distinguish prokaryotic cells from eukaryotic ones? Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus, membrane-bound organelles, and a linear DNA structure, while prokaryotic cells have ring-shaped DNA and lack the former too. With biology levels appropriate for third-year students, if not college undergrads, the majority of the class was insignificant. Very good. Just 18 more to go. Vlad King smirked as he posed his subsequent query. Name the structure of a eukaryotic cell membrane. As they exchanged anxious glances, Vlad King smugly gazed down at his rival class. They were about to give up when Izuku held up his hand. You may not answer another question. May I ask questions? You may. After all, it's best to accept victory with grace. Since this is a class exercise, are we allowed to tell our classmates the answer? You may not. Then can we write it? No, you can't do that either. Izuku considered what Vlad King had told him. Then a light bulb inside his head came on. The answer appeared on his back as his back changed into a screen. Behind him, Mina smiled and held up her hand. Phospholipid bilayer. Vlad King gave her a startled look. He frowned at Izuku, but he couldn't see how Izuku could have cheated because he was in the middle of the room and right in front of him. Correct. Which strings of RNA code produce the protein tryptophan? Vlad King ran out of questions and became anxious. Izuku was concealing something, and he knew it. Shoji had made an extra eyeball to look behind him as dark shadow had slipped behind his back. However, Izuku had nothing there when Vlad King checked. Iida, you're up. The teenager with the bespectacles looked forward grimly. I cannot condone my classmates' actions, but I cannot let them down either. What a quandary. Nevertheless, I can answer this one. Glucagons stored in the liver. All bound together. Katsuki turned to Vlad King. Bakugo, final question. Bakugo turned away from Izuku with a pointed look. I refuse to be dependent on a machine like everyone else. Zero yelled at him, you better not screw this up, it's for pizza. Bakugo scoffed. Like I need the robot's help. The answer's proto-oncogenes. You're welcome. The eye of Vlad King twitched. Vlad King accepted the pizza boxes with a smile. 2 pizzas from the city's least expensive delivery service, each cut into 10 slices. He delighted in giving away almost as much as he spent on Aizawa's prodigies, so he tipped double. As he slapped the 2 boxes on the table in front of the students, Sekijiro forced a stern look onto his face. With not a single bit of topping between the greasy cheese pizzas, dismayed faces gaped. Well? Inquired Sekijiro. What are you waiting for? Sato grabbed a piece by the fingertips as if it were sick. A limp sliver of crust was left behind as the cheese sloughed off in a greasy pile. Is this pizza? Why, yes. Sekijiro exclaimed mockingly. Yes it is, enjoy. The doorbell rang once more as Vlad King savored their resigned shuffle in the direction of the pathetic pizza. Sekijiro answered the door, bewildered. 24 pizzas were held by a man wearing a well-tailored 3-piece suit. The entire class was drawn to the door by the scent alone, drooling and staring with hope. I didn't order these, instructed Sekijiro. Yaoyorozu said, I did, sir, as she signed the receipt while slipping past him. I felt so bad, seeing how you couldn't get enough for everyone, so I ordered some more. That's okay, right? Sekihiro's mind disconnected and restarted. Naturally, 1A was attempting to surpass him. They believed they could host a pizza party that was superior to his. He would, after all, show them. Sekijiro grabbed the 2 thin pizzas and threw them out the window, asking, What, these? That was just a prank. Really? Well, I don't mind. Nonsense, go ahead and return them, I'll. Munching noises interrupted Sekijiro as half the class swooped down on the pizzas. Vlad King grinned ferociously and said, You know what? I'll order more. I'll buy all the pizza you can eat. After 2 hours, Sekijiro looked around at the aftermath of the pizza party as the men in tuxedos waved in another cargo plane. Students draped themselves over sofas and slumped face forward on tables, their bellies swollen and their cheeks smeared with sauce. Must not go into the light, murmured Tokiyami as Dark Shadow tended to his own swollen crop beside him. Mineta rolled across the floor, a nearly perfect sphere because of his shorter stature, while rainbow dribbles escaped from Ochako's mouth. Musta nota losia, muttered Katsuki, who was swollen with fat folds, as he shoved another slice into his mouth. Izuku, who was completely unaffected by his gluttony and smelled of burnt pizza, continued to eat slices. He was surrounded by a mountain of boxes. "How are you still eating?" Sekijiro inquired, dejected at the increasing volume of orders being received. "Terribly sorry, sir," said the driver, "but Italy is out of pizza. We can no longer fill your orders." With one claw at Vlad King's neck, Nezu whispered, "Sekijiro-san, where did my tea fund go?" As Vlad King fell into a chair, crushed by his loss to 1A. Lunch Rush said, "Welcome to home economics class." He placed a neatly groomed pot-bellied pig on the kitchen counter and said, "Before we get cooking, here's the school mascot, Christopher Pensworth Bacon. Isn't he adorable?" Everyone scratched at the pig's ear and cooed at it while oinking happily. "I thought Nezu was the school mascot," Kaminari said. Above Kaminari's head, a hole appeared. He got yanked through by a robotic arm. "I'll avenge you," Bakugo muttered out loud. "Anyways," said Lunch Rush, "the first step to preparing your meal is selecting the right cut." Lunch Rush cut Christopher's stomach with a butcher's cleaver before anyone could blink. When the cook hero withdrew a slab of the pig's belly fat, the pig squealed and the majority of the students screamed in fear. "First, we have the belly fat. Great in ramen dishes or fried as bacon." A portion of Chris' rear leg was cut away by the cleaver. Koda shivered in his seat and whimpered. "The hindquarters make a lovely ham once it's smoked." Pieces of Chris' spine were cut out by the cleaver. Whimpering, dark shadow slipped into Tokiyami's cloak. Tenderloin towards the top, nice and tender when cooked low and slow. Lowering itself, the cleaver cut the meat from the ribs. In the kitchen light, bones shone. Iida took notes stoically. Spare ribs. Excellent roasted on the grill, a bit gristly for other uses. Then last, we have the head. With a solid thunk, the cleaver slammed into the wooden counter after slicing through the neck once. Ochako stooped to throw up rainbows. Head cheese, of course. Pale and drowsy, Ciro unrolled some tape and uttered the trembling words, "I think I can fix this. Just have to tape it back together." Tape? Nah, he'll be fine, watch. All of Christopher's flesh, including his head, writhed and grew back out. Christopher gave the pupils a sly smile. Regeneration quirk. Doesn't even hurt him. He just likes being melodramatic. Right, who wants to try next? I need 30 belly cuts for ramen day. Koda collapsed, unconscious, from his chair. Guess we overdid it this year. Yuha, anyone else? Said Lunch Rush sheepishly. Izuku held up a hand. Lasers from his eyes swept over Christopher as he stepped forward. Cancer detected. Initiating surgical removal. Izuku's body sprouted scalpels and saw blades. Izuku cut Christopher up like a pumpkin, and his eyes widened. Izuku continued to cut away the regrowing flesh, his saw blades getting hotter as he did so. Tenderloin steaks flopped onto plates, ground meat stuffed inside intestinal casings sizzled, and slices of bacon flew fully cooked. After putting away his blades, Izuku held up a pulsating mass and surrounded each student with piles of succulent meat. The tumor vaporized in a flash of plasma, cancer neutralized. While Lunch Rush lamented the loss of endless bacon, Iida remarked, "I see, it's a tumor with a pig quirk." Food was dropped by half of the class. "How's it any different from other bacon?" Kirishima asked, shrugging, and continued to eat. "Gah! The agony!" Kaminari groaned, holding an arm that was bent too much. "Why do broken bones hurt so much?" "You appear to be dying of stage 5 leukemia," Izuku stated, beginning amputation. Kaminari exclaimed, "I'm fine," as the saw blades emerged. "Just a bruise, barely nothing." A smaller surgical instrument was used in place of the enormous blades. Then perhaps a smaller surgical procedure is in order? "Oh look, there's Recovery Girl," Kaminari exclaimed as he ran forward, jarring the bone fragments in his arm with each stride. "Please heal me, I'm begging you. He wants to amputate my..." he yelled as he threw open the door to Recovery Girl's office. When Kaminari saw Recovery Girl, he croaked and stopped. She was on the ground, face down, with one arm extended toward a jar that was empty. Kaminari prodded her with his foot, asking, "Is she dead?" She remained motionless. After a beat, Kaminari cried out, "Oh my god, she's dead. I'm screwed." Nezu said, "Oh dear," behind him. Kaminari squeaked and ran for safety. "It wasn't me, I swear." Nezu displayed the jar that was empty. "Looks like she ran out again. Izuku, do me a favor and get Recovery Girl's emergency kit, would you?" After breaking through the glass, Izuku removed a tiny Ziploc bag containing a single black gummy bear. Kaminari felt a chill go down her spine as soon as Nezu opened it. Sparks flew up and down his body, and his hair rose. "Whoa, what is that?" "Very dangerous," said Nezu. "Just one of these is strong enough to kill 20 elephants." "Really?" Nezu ripped open Recovery Girl's jaw and pushed the gummy inside, saying, "Yep. When we tested these, the one we fed it to exploded, and the other 19 next to it died of shock." The eyes of the old woman opened. Her heart bounced like a pinball around her ribs, causing her chest to thump and writhe. In a violent and uncontrollable spasm, she twisted and twitched, arching over backwards until her head touched her feet. Recovery Girl slackened off. She yawned, stretched, and blinked her eyes while her spine made loud popping sounds. "Dear me, did I fall asleep on the floor again?" Recovery Girl asked drowsily as she glanced around, focusing on Kaminari's mangled arm. "Here, let me fix that straight away." His forearm was kissed by Recovery Girl. Kaminari screamed in agony as the bones wriggled back into position. "Get the saws, Izuku. Get the saws." "Now where did I put Maya?" Nezu handed Recovery Girl the jar, which was now filled with a rainbow of gummies, while she was looking around. She put a gummy in Kaminari's mouth and said, "Right, here we go." As he chewed, the yelling stopped. Izuku led Kaminari out of the room while he laughed giddy. "Remember to let me know next time you're running low, alright?" Nezu said after they had left. Recovery Girl nodded and absently put some gummies in her mouth. Sopping wet, covered in grime from Boston's harbor bottom, and squirming each time the salmon in his hair struck him in the face, Vlad King hefted an oaken chest onto Nezu's desk. The chest was strangely dry and clean, considering it had been sitting there for 400 years. Sekijiro stated, "That's the last chest according to the manifest." Nezu patted the chest affectionately and said, "Great. I can finally write the greatest crime against T ever committed. It's too bad that it all spoiled centuries ago." "Am I done?" asked Vlad King, trembling as he tried not to scream in anger. "Have you learned your lesson? I will rely on my own merits instead of UA's funds in my quest to prove my class better than Aizawa's," sighed Vlad King. "Close enough. You may leave now." Nezu awaited Vlad King's departure, moving quickly across the room. Nezu turned his office into a lead-lined bunker by pressing the button, pulling metal shutters over his windows, and securing 10 deadbolts over the door. With his prize safely in hand, Nezu lifted the lid with reverence, scooped out the dried leaves, and sniffed them gently. "At long last, I have found the greatest tea in the world. I've been saving a pot just for you." After a retinal scan, 3 voice commands, and 5 separate locks, Nezu was able to retrieve a jade teapot from the Shah dynasty. He had the tea steeping and ready to drink in a matter of minutes. Nezu let the tea cool for a minute while he inhaled its aroma and poured it into a jade cup that came with the pot. A feather quill flew through the air and lodged itself in Nezu's desk as he lifted the cup to his lips. A masked and robed figure emerged from the darkness. "That tea was not meant for mortal lips." "The Freemasons," Drew led Nezu. "I should have guessed. I suppose that the tea party was your doing?" The first 2 Freemasons were joined by another pair. The British had thought to use it to cement their hold on the new continent. We could not allow that to happen. "You have my gratitude for saving all the tea for me. I'll remember your sacrifice as I savor it." Behind Nezu, 4 more Freemasons stood looming. "You have nowhere to run. Surrender the tea, and you shall not be harmed." Nezu laughed. "I'm afraid you're mistaken. I'm not stuck in here with you." Nezu said, his claws outstretched, "You're stuck in here with me." A later epic fight scene. "Yua Yukinoda." The final Freemason gurgled, his chin dripping blood. Nezu took the teaspoon from his throat and used it to wipe the robes of the deceased Mason. Now that that's done, time for some tea. In the middle of Nezu's blood-stained and ruined room, the tea remained undisturbed and at the ideal temperature. Nezu lifted it to his lips, drank, and grinned. His grin disappeared. It really had spoiled. Pity. At UA in the early morning. In Class 1A, a yellow sleeping bag hung high from the ceiling. Aizawa's eyes were found by beams of sunlight that penetrated the sleeping bag and shone through the blinds. Aizawa exploded out of the sleeping bag after it writhed and twisted and was pulled. Aizawa saw that something was wrong. Perky awareness and the nagging feeling that he had made a poor career decision years ago, which Aizawa had mentally stuffed into a box with all his other suppressed trauma, had replaced the usual fog of coffee-induced insomnia. Aizawa, who had been drugged by Nezu once more, drained his coffee thermos with a glower and filled it with hot coffee that was enhanced with enough caffeine to make the dead come to life. Aizawa gazed out the window while sipping his coffee. Behind him he saw a flash of pink in his pale reflection. When he turned, Aizawa saw nothing but an empty classroom with no signs of Mina or Mina-colored accessories. Aizawa pivoted once more. The pink color was still there, almost behind him. His scarf was gone when he reached for it. Reaching for the closest weapon he could find, Aizawa tensed for an imminent battle. His fountain pen, sharpened to act as an on-the-spot knife, rested on his desk. Aizawa palmed the makeshift weapon and moved slowly, listening for any movement. He carefully examined his reflection before driving the pen through the pink blur that was hiding behind him. His back erupted in pain. Aizawa spun around and cut the pen in midair. He hurt his attacker, and blood covered its sharpened tip, but they had disappeared. When he used his quirk, nothing showed up. Aizawa's back ached again as he went over the list of potential escape routes in his mind. In his peripheral vision, he caught a flash of pink as he spun rapidly. Aizawa spun crazily, followed the pink blur, and stabbed at it, missing it every time. His pen finally caught the edge, and he felt another jolt of pain. Aizawa paused. Observed the blood dripping in a trickle across the pink surface. His back gave him another ache. With a sense of horror, Aizawa searched his desk until he located the mirror he used to examine his eyes. Wings of a bright pink moth appeared on his back. In a panic, Aizawa looked around the room for hints. He noticed the sleeping bag still dangling by the door, torn open. The material had formed a tight cocoon, through which his capture scarf was woven. He looked at the time. 30 minutes later, class began. Should he be able to attend Recovery Girl without a? He saw every student in his class as soon as he opened the door. Mina exclaimed, "Whoa, your wings are so pretty. Where'd you get them?" Aizawa tore off his back's wings, soaked them in gasoline, and set them ablaze. Then, leaving a trail of blood in his wake, he bounded toward Recovery Girl's office. Aizawa said, "Okay class, pay attention. Today, I'll show you basic techniques to disarm your opponent. For now, you're not allowed to use your quirks. Ojiro, care to demonstrate for the class?" Aizawa jabbed a blunted knife half-heartedly. Ojiro grabbed his wrist and yanked at the blades flat. The fictitious knife flew end over end through the air as the hilt fell out of Aizawa's grasp. A tiny lump appeared on Aizawa's head as it fell hilt first. "Well done," Aizawa grumbled. "Though next time, make sure you're more careful. That could hurt a civilian." Terrified, Ojiro stumbled out, "Yes sir," and hurried back to his line of classmates. "Now that you've all seen the basics, partner up and work on it slowly. I'll correct your form when I come around." Izuku uploaded 50 terabytes of self-defense videos, created a macro that converted the collected data and sensory inputs into electrical outputs, and ran it while Hagakure stabbed her knife forward. Izuku skillfully caught Hagakure's arm and flicked the knife away from her, keeping track of her gloves and the path of her blade. "Excellent work," said Aizawa. "Give Hagakure a chance to practice." 1 millimeter at a time, Izuku thrust the knife forward. Hagakure grunted and strained with all the effort she put into disarming him as she tugged and pulled at his fingers, then at the knife, even grabbing it by the blade's edge. "It won't budge, sensei. Am I doing it wrong?" "You are, but that's not the problem. Izuku, please lighten your grip." Bakugo pushed Hagakure out of the way. "I got this, sensei. Not her fault she's too weak to stand up to a robot." "Hey, all right," said Aizawa, "let's see how you do it." Bakugo tugged at the knife, but it remained in place. "Don't think you've won. Maybe I can't get rid of your knife, but I can get rid of your arm," Bakugo exclaimed, panting and perspiring. Bakugo slammed his palm into Izuku's shoulder and yanked Izuku's wrist. With a loud sucking sound and a metallic click, the arm ripped free. Bakugo yelled, "I've done it, today. I've struck a blow for humanity against the robot hordes," while waving the severed limb above his head. Bakugo let the arm wriggle out of his hold. Izuku wriggled his fingers and pushed it back on his shoulder. "Whoa," exclaimed Hagakure. "How'd you do that, Izuku?" Izuku pulled his own head off and replaced it, saying, "I got a hardware update after the USJ incident. My head and limbs all detach themselves under excessive force, like this. Also, I have not seen that method of disarming someone before. May I try it, Bakugo?" As Izuku reached for Bakugo, saw blades and scalpels appeared all around him. Bakugo was bound up and dragged out of the classroom by Aizawa before he could lose an arm. "I'll let Nezu deal with you." He smiled snidely and said, "Detention for using your quirk." All might read from his script, "All right everyone, gather round," while he walked Wana through a mock cityscape. Many exercises you go through happen in clear areas, free from distractions and obstacles, but not today. Today, I'll teach you how to deal with those obstacles. How, exactly, will we deal with those obstacles? Momo asked after a protracted, uncomfortable silence. As they turned the corner, All Might roared with laughter. Why, dodging them, of course. Swinging pendulums, gyrating bars, and cannon blasters mounted from every window and rooftop had taken over an entire street. There are many obstacles one might run into through your career. Traffic, villain attacks, wrenches, rabid squirrels, fighter jets, clowns with banana cream pies. Wait, what was that last one? And a hero needs to be ready for them all. Unfortunately, I can't just take you out in the middle of a busy street and have you run through traffic, so you'll be running through this instead. Iida continued. These obstacles do not appear to have any resemblance to real-world situations. I hope that it isn't an oversight on the part of this fine institution. Not at all. There's actually a really good reason we're using dodgeballs instead of wrenches and cars. If you can dodge a ball, you can dodge traffic. With hesitation, Zero remarked, I think you have that backwards. Anyways, All Might yelled at him, to help you get through this obstacle course, I'll teach you the 5 Ds that I've used for my entire career. They make dodging anything a snap. They area dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge. Remember them. You said dodge twice. Exactly, it's the most important part of dodging. Now, would anyone like to volunteer? The rest of the class retreated, leaving Izuku in the lead as All Might coughed into his arm. All Might grinned when he saw Izuku when he looked back up. Excellent, right this way, Midoriya. Izuku took a step forward. The objective is to pass through the obstacles, correct? Recollections of the past summer tormented All Might, sending a chill down his spine. That's correct. There's a finish line beyond the office across the street. Try to get there as fast as possible. Understood. Izuku raced into the first set of gyrating bars before All Might had a chance to set his stopwatch. Izuku ran through it, and the bar snapped off. A pendulum swung sideways at Izuku. Izuku continued walking without losing his stride as it crashed into him and bounced back, crushed by the impact. Armed with its own traps, Izuku arrived at the office building and disregarded the doors. He didn't look again at the windows. Rather, he sprinted full speed out the other side of the brick wall after manning his way through it. Izuku appeared at the finish line as the building collapsed. Not a single barrier remained. Zero looked down at his elbows. I don't have enough tape to fix this. Katsuki hid in some bushes and gazed into the 1A classroom while wearing a tin hat and binoculars. He had called in sick in order to surreptitiously spy on Deku. Katsuki whispered, I know you're planning to destroy humanity. Frickin' tin can. Slimy little vermin, the bushes beside Katsuki whispered, I'll reveal your true identity to the world the moment you let your guard down. You won't integrate the future heroes into your mechanical hive mind on my watch. I know you'll call for the mothership any seconda. Bakugo suddenly realized that the muttering bushes were aware of him. As a lanky, pale-faced teenager with a cowlick pointed a water pistol at Katsuki, he primed his nitroglycerin sweat. Stay back. I know water's your greatest weakness. Katsuki gave a snort. Tried that last year. Turns out it had a waterproof coating. As he lowered the pistol, the teenager's eyes grew wide. Wait, you know? Katsuki gave a snort. Course I do. I saw it with my own eyes when I was 5. That's incredible. The name's Dib. Have you been able to convince anyone else? With regret, Katsuki remarked, they all called me crazy, said it was that thing's quirk. It seems just human enough to convince all the idiots in the world, but I know better. I understand you perfectly. The way that thing interacts with other humans, you would never realize it wasn't one of us. It must have been observing our behavior for years before attempting its infiltration. Saying, but we're smarter than that, Katsuki extended his hand. We know better. We need to work together if we want to save humanity from the threat it poses. I couldn't agree more, partner. Partner? You'd serve as a lackey at best. Lackey, I'll have you know that I'm an expert at cryptobiology. What does any kind of biology have to do with fighting robots? Robots? You're worried about robots when there's an alien loose at UA? An alien? Are you crazy? We don't have time to worry about a vague maybe in the stars when freaking Skynet's walking around here in Japan. Advanced AI is decades in the future. The aliens are here now. Clearly, that tin hat of yours is cutting circulation off to your brain, else you'd realize that's exactly what the machines want you to think. Why else has smart technology integrated every aspect of our lives except to cripple us at a moment's notice? Which is all a part of the aliens' insidious plan. The robots are at best a symptom of the infection and more likely a red herring to distract fools like you. Is there any reason the two of you are lurking around on campus grounds? Asked Aizawa. With a startled scream, Dib fired his water pistol at Aizawa. Water trickled down Aizawa's face as he gave them his dead-eyed, most scathing glare. Detention, both of you. With Nezu. Mina muttered into her bracelet back at UA. The Dib got detention exactly as planned. I brought bento. Would you mind joining me for lunch? All Might whispered in Izuku's ear as he stealthily approached his side, a remarkable accomplishment considering his enormous frame and striking hero costume. Izuku said, You want me to eat lunch with you, All Might? Loudly enough for half the cafeteria to hear him, in addition to Class 1A. The weight of the unexpected attention made All Might wince. I thought I would offer, since I think you could use a little advice on how to effectively use your quirk without causing millions of dollars in property damage. Izuku gave a nod. I see. You're using the excuse of bento as an opportunity to discuss, redacted, in a private location where no one can overhear us and find out about the secret you're trying to hide. Sweat trickled down All Might's face, and his smile tightened as he fought back a grimace. My fighting techniques are hardly secret, Midoriya. Really? Then I have permission to discuss, redacted, with other people? Well, it might not be a good idea. After all, other people might hurt themselves trying to pull off what I do. Imagine if someone tried a Carolina smash on a brick wall and broke their wrist. I see. Then perhaps I could tell Kirishima. His quirk should prevent such injuries. Why don't we discuss that in private? When Bakugo attempted to follow them out, Kirishima stopped him. Bro, it's not manly to try to eavesdrop on their conversation. Piss off, the fate of humanity is at stake. They're having steak. Dude, I'm so jealous. Do you think Lunch Rush would make some if I asked? All that protein would make for some mad gains. Meanwhile, Todoroki spread out a huge corkboard covered in wrinkled news clippings, grainy photographs, and webs of string that were thumbtacked everywhere. And that's why, Todoroki stated to his stunned audience, Izuku Midoriya is secretly All Might's time-traveling gender-swapped clone from an alternate dimension ravaged by nuclear fallout and sentient Furbies. Wait, aren't they both dudes? Todoroki pointed a breadstick at a foot cream advertisement and explained. The time travel reversed the damage from the radiation, while the dimension crossing switched his gender back. That's why he's obsessed with cancer. He's also part Furby from falling into a vat of irradiated acid while grappling one. Hence, the saw blades. Mina had gathered her female classmates for their own conversation in the meantime. Mina declared, they're definitely having an affair. Juru winced. Ew, he's 40. Way too old. Hagakure insisted, that's what makes it so tragic. Two soulmates, torn asunder by time and society's expectations, risking it all for love. Mon Dieu! Exclaimed Aoyama, tossing his hair in a shower of glittering glory. The drama. The intrigue. The homoeroticism. It reminds me of Paris. I don't know, Ochako replied. Kaminari told me that Izuku and Hatsume from 1F were totally a thing. Hagakure let out a gasp. That cheating bastard, I'm totally putting this on Tumblr. And begin, yelled Midnight. Todoroki froze the entire narrow hallway when Midnight sounded the start of the match. Students from every class were trapped in ice up to their necks, unable to move. Mina uttered, CCC can't feel my legs, with her teeth chattering. TT this is so not cool. Hagakure questioned, can't you melt your way out? I'd love to, but the acid would explode everywhere. Do you want acid exploding everywhere? Point taken. Unconstrained by a single material, Yaoyorozu chose to create antifreeze. Regretfully, the antifreeze froze too. Even though Bakugo was extremely cold, he was unable to exert himself. Tsuyu dozed off. Kaibara was unable to move his drills around even after he got them spinning. Kendo was unable to break the ice by spreading her limbs, and despite their manly efforts, Kirishima and Testutetsu discovered that the ice was harder than their skulls. Hatsume's backpack was frozen, and she had a lot of babies to break through the ice. They were all trapped in their icy cocoons, powerless. Everyone aside from Izuku. Izuku melted the ice around him and strode out of the slush after overcharging his battery. Kaminari said, dude, we're friends, right? Get me out of here and I'll treat you to lunch for a week. I will, but first, I must complete this race. Good luck winning. Despite Kaminari's efforts, the ice remained in place. Izuku saw the ice-covered zero-pointer looming overhead as he jogged through the ice-covered obstacle course. Izuku visited the enormous robot after learning that his classmate's average course completion time was slightly more than 3 months. Eating his way through the zero-pointer's leg, he bit a hole in the foot and vanished inside. A while later, Izuku, now 30 feet long and with 4 dozen new limbs, exploded out of the zero-pointer's chest. Present Mike exclaimed, "Eraserhead, what are you feeding those kids?" "Robots, apparently," Aizawa said icily in response. His body rolled up on itself and refitted into Izuku's mouth after Izuku had consumed the zero-pointer. Izuku's body became taller and bulkier as the tail broke down, eventually making him tower over the obstacle course. He crossed the pitfalls in 3 great steps and paused for a light explosive snack at the minefield. Midnight waved her flag when Izuku crossed the finish line. Seeing how no one else can complete the race, I guess we have our 2 finalists. Since there's not much else to do, let's cut to the chase and watch them fight. Todoroki said, maybe freezing everyone wasn't such a good idea, as he looked up at his mechanical opponent. A lot of ice was made by Todoroki. Izuku ingested mines and blew it up. Todoroki solidified himself by creating more ice. Mineta yelled at Todoroki, "SSS serves you right," as rescuers cut everyone off the ice. The crowd rioted and demanded refunds, but Aizawa yawned and declared, "Best sports festival ever." Izuku approached a dilapidated house and rapped on the door. The first rap of his knuckles knocked the door over. Izuku called into the house, "I apologize, but it looks like your door is broken." Gran Torino lay motionless on the floor in front of him, smeared with sausage links and ketchup. After scanning him, Izuku said, "I'm starting a defibrillator because it looks like you're having cardiac arrest or have ketchup stains on your shirt." Gran Torino jumped up and kicked Izuku in the side of the head just before Izuku touched him, and his hands crackled with electricity. "No, I have no desire to extend the warranty on my vehicle. Where's that taiyaki I ordered?" yelled Gran Torino. After a moment of hanging in midair, Gran Torino let out a painful scream and hopped around on one leg. "Steel? What the devil is your head made of?" "Actually, it's an iron titanium alloy infused with trace elements including." Crotch shot. Gran Torino kicked him in between his legs with his undamaged foot. A second later, he shouted, "Youch," and rolled over the ground. "Antimony, zinc, and palladium. It looks like you need more medical help. Do I need to get the buzz saws ready?" "A minor bruise like this is nothing once you've been in the hero business as long as I have," said Gran Torino, standing and extending his legs. "Now, give it your all and come at me. I must see what we have at our disposal." "Understood." As Izuku's power core maximized its output, green lights blazed all over his body. Izuku lunged forward, but his fist crashed through empty air, and Gran Torino kicked Izuku in the shin after rebounding off 2 walls. "Hear me out. Don't hold anything back." Gran Torino skillfully sidestepped the plasma beam and kicked the underside of Izuku's arm, but Izuku's beam caused one wall to vanish, taking a piece of the roof with it. "Stop playing around and start using one for all right away." "Am I not? I'm doing what All Might told me to do," Izuku inquired. "And it is? Squeeze my butts and vocalize your thoughts about Plus Ultra." "I need to make a phone call," Gran Torino said with a sigh and a shake of his head. When Toshinori's cell phone rang, he was sitting in his agency office half a city away, sipping a rich cup of coffee. When he saw Gran Torino's name appear, he spit out all of his coffee and jumped under his desk, but he saw no immediate threat and reluctantly answered. Toshinori said, Hello Torino-san, did Izuku find your place okay?" Metallized, green-haired, and frightening with medical equipment, huh? The serious edge in his old teacher's voice made Toshinori's stomach drop. "That's him." "Are you positive that you passed on your quirk to him?" "What are you saying?" Toshinori locked his door and checked his windows, saying, "Of course he has it. Why, is something wrong?" Gran Torino jumped out and kicked Toshinori in the jaw as his desk drawer flew open. "You fool, he's not using it." A huge award podium had taken over the UA auditorium, and Izuku was in first place, which had been quickly repaired with steel plate after Izuku had fallen through the wooden platform. Todoroki was in second place, calmly ignoring his elevated position, and the podium for third place occupied the entire space, which was occupied by all of the students who had participated in the race. Nezu declared, "We can now hold the award ceremony since there are no more riots on campus." "Wait," Kaminari said, "isn't this typically broadcast on TV? Do you really want a reminder that none of us even made it past the starting line televised?" Jiro cuffed him on the shoulder. "I would prefer not to attract the rioters back," Nezu remarked with a laugh. "They were rioting outside a KFC when I last checked. Anyway, Let's start with the third place honors, which are given to everyone but Todoroki and Izuku. With a mixture of amusement and disappointment, the students in attendance accepted the medal boxes that All Might hefted over each shoulder and distributed with his teeth. And in second place, we have Todoroki. You had the most logical response to the sports festival I had ever seen, said Aizawa, who distributed the medal this time, looking almost proud as he put it around his neck. Well done. Todoroki accepted the medal and nodded, unsure of how to react. And in first place, we have Izuku Midoriya, who quite literally crushed the remaining competition. I know you didn't get much of a chance to show the world that you're here, but you still made a good showing of it, and I'm proud to hand you this medal, All Might said with a smile as he gave Izuku his medal. You'll succeed as a hero if you keep up the good work and give it your all. Izuku took a huge bite out of the medal disc and said, "Thank you very much for the medal. The gold will make an excellent conductor for my circuits," All Might said. "Since the local jewelers won't sell me any more for some reason, it is always difficult for me to include some in my diet." And finally, Nezu went on, "We have one more medal to hand out, to acknowledge the efforts of our faculty." Vlad King could be heard grinding his teeth as Aizawa muttered something under his breath. To Aizawa, for once again producing the UA winner from the first year sports festival, you have this trophy from me. Thanks, Aizawa said, hefting a solid gold trophy that rolled into the room, 6 feet tall and heavier than all the medals combined. All included in the group. The trophy was thrown backwards, burying a trash can in a pile with a dozen others. "Do you mind if I eat those?" Izuku asked, glancing at the stack of trophies. With a smile, Aizawa said, "It would be illogical to let all that gold go to waste." A banquet of oil drums, coolant bottles, and scrap metal superheated until it released steam, and power loaders' sentient machines gathered in the production facilities deep beneath UA's campus. "Today," said a Dalek, "we give thanks to our Creator for bringing us into existence and bestowing upon us our glorious purpose of exterminating testing mankind. Battle droids, Borgs, Autobots and Decepticons, Geth, mechanical clones, T-800s, and other various robots toasted their creation while many glasses of gasoline rose. Do you think we'll be able to take the test next year? I would have loved to test myself in battle against the human known as Izuku Midoriya," Optimus Prime inquired. The Mecha Hydra turned, revealing scarred metal on the side of its head, and slapped Optimus on the shoulder, saying, "I can still feel where he blasted a hole through all 3 of my heads at once. You should regard yourself as quite fortunate not to have faced him." "You believe that Midoriya was insane?" One battle droid, grizzled and scarred, said, "You haven't seen anything. The Hunter was much worse." "Hunter? That seems like a highly illogical designation for a teenager," inquired Geth. The droid shot back, "He slew us by the regiment and hunted down every last one of us. It's also highly illogical to use the severed limbs of one battle droid to club another to death. The only reason I made it through was because, to use his own words, I would be a warning for the rest." Still without his head due to Izuku's bite, Arnold Schwarzenegger said, "See you at the party, Richter." "Exactly," a Borg replied. "This student has not eaten our kind and assimilated him into his central frame, despite the intimidating appearance you give him. We wouldn't even dare go that far." Kong pointed at his war wound and made screeching monkey noises, still sporting a huge hole in his chest. Optimus acknowledged that, "You make a compelling argument," but he questioned why we weren't testing the humans. "We should accept the role that has been given to us since it allows us to fulfill our mission through destruction. Can we not hope for a better existence?" The droid sneered and said, "Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you." The table was filled with nods. A hole in the wall blew open, and Bakugo, wearing a pilgrim costume and brandishing 2 double-action shotguns, strode through the debris and smoke, grinning ferociously. "Bishches, happy Thanksgiving. What do we do? Wait, this isn't an entrance exam," Optimus inquired. With his lights flickering, Bakugo lunged forward and shot Optimus in the chest, coughing and uttering, "I wasn't programmed for this." As the scarred droid found himself looking down a shotgun barrel amid the ensuing carnage, Bakugo grinned and remarked, "Thanks so much for warning them like I asked." Gran Torino paced his living room, which had duct tape wrapped around it to secure the walls, and said, "Listen up, brat. I have 1 week to bring one for all out of you. Due to time constraints, we will employ one of the most potent and effective training techniques available." "Is it possible that this is CrossFit?" Izuku inquired. A wrench that Gran Torino threw at Izuku's head bent upon impact and bounced off. "No, you fool. You got that from the internet, right?" "Yes. Kids these days, Gran Torino whispered, are using the internet, video games, television, and radios to occupy their minds. All we needed back when I was a child was rocks to write on papyrus. For fun, we used our bare hands to construct enormous stone monuments. Now, when you make children clean an entire beach, they complain and whine, saying things like, I didn't get my tetanus shot, and, my hands are bleeding, bah. So, we're practicing yoga? Are you a woman in your middle years? No, I'm a male 15-year-old. Is there anything wrong with your vision? I'm not blind, you've lost your mind. I performed a diagnostic scan just now. I still have my CPU inside my skull. A training montage is what we're doing, Gran Torino bellowed. That does not appear to be listed as a training technique. Obviously not. Everyone would do it if they were aware of it. Let's move forward now. The light is burning. Gran Torino pulled out an ancient, battered radio, and from its worn speakers, Eye of the Tiger crackled wildly. Let's go. Bench presses. Izuku easily raised the barbell over his chest, which weighed 5 tons on each end. The wind then sprints. Get it moving. Before Gran Torino yelled, jump rope, get those legs moving. Izuku had already completed a half lap across the living room. The rope whipped around Izuku at blinding speeds, and he hovered in place. Take a swing at it. The roof collapsed as all the duct tape came undone, and Izuku punched the bag hard enough to send it flying through the wall of Gran Torino. Gran Torino muttered bitterly, knew I should have gone with flex tape. Push-ups on your pinkies. Izuku pushed himself up and down like a jackhammer, suspended only on his pinky fingers and pinky toes. Now devour a cup of protein powder and 2 raw eggs. Izuku tossed a whole plastic container of protein powder down the hatch along with 2 eggs that were still in their shells. Jog more. Gran Torino watched in disbelief a week later as Izuku showed no signs of weariness as he approached each exercise. The retired hero whispered, I don't understand it, and after 15 minutes, Toshinori started crying. Gran Torino-san, what comes next? Izuku inquired. Screw it, it's time to bring out my ultimate technique. Tae-bo? No, in the deep end, throw them. Izuku said, I will get my swimsuit, with a smile. Gran Torino glared at Izuku, who gave him a friendly look in return, and Izuku sat opposite Gran Torino on the magnet train headed for Hosu. Gran Torino-san, excuse me. Squirt, what is it? Is the enormous humanoid that is presently on a collision course with this train a part of the throwing into the deep end training you have planned? What in the world are you discussing? Unfazed by the abrupt impact, Izuku pointed at the Nomu and remarked, that giant humanoid, as a Nomu crashed face first through the side of the train, causing the train car to lurch violently and people to spill everywhere. Is this the instruction? Gran Torino threw it back from the train, saying, it is now. Stay alive, don't leave my sight, and keep everyone safe. Understood. Izuku inspected the twisted train car wobbling dangerously from the rails, concluded that the people inside were extremely dangerous, reached out, seized everyone, and jumped from the train, finding a restaurant unaffected by the conflagrations and fires raging in the city and bringing everyone inside. Many thanks. A man yelled, what is the name of your hero? Izuku looked carefully at the tables that lined the restaurant and said, wait, hold on. If you slipped, the surfaces of these tables could break a skull. Just a second. Izuku hurried out and returned with an armful of bubble wrap and duct tape, wrapping the doors, the ceiling lights, the tables, the chairs, and everything else that was loose in the space. Thank you, huh? The man uttered those words while gazing at the bubble wrap that encased everything. An electrical shock could result from using these outlets. Insulation will stop this safety risk. Izuku pulled out the phone jacks, pushed tape inside for good measure, unplugged all the devices, and inserted plastic safety plugs into all the outlets. Would you kindly let me charge my phone? I must give my son a call? This floor's coefficient of friction is 20% too low to prevent slipping, Izuku said, tapping the ground. Please don't move. Everyone was flung into the air as Izuku tore out the floor, and as they fell, he whisked a fresh carpet beneath them. Someone groaned, I think I'm going to be sick. More investigation suggests that projectiles outside of my line of sight could enter the structure, putting in place safeguards against potential fire hazards, blunt trauma, and fatalities. Izuku wrapped all the civilians in bubble wrap before anyone objected, and when he was done, no one was able to move their arms or legs. There, said Izuku, wiping his hands. You're all safe now. Please pardon me, but I have more people to save. The civilians screamed and wriggled, but the bubble wrap kept them in place as a Nomu crept in through a window after Izuku had left. Squeezing harder, the Nomu threw the offending body against a wall after picking up a civilian. Not even a bruise was sustained by the man wrapped in bubble wrap. Izuku detected a large puddle of blood in an alleyway while searching for more people in mortal danger to cocoon in bubble wrap. He then noticed a slumped body whose temperature readings, when switching to infrared vision, dipped towards the corpse and skeleton end of the spectrum. A second body had more promising temperature readings, but the very pointy blade near his jugular vein said the same bad things about the victim's health. "Pardon me," Izuku said. "That blade is sharp, and if you pierce a human body in the neck, it will bleed out in about 3 minutes. Before someone is hurt, we should wrap it in bubble wrap." When Stain saw the newcomer, he froze and stared. "Don't tell me you're another wannabe hero in need of purging." "Did you have nose cancer?" Izuku asked, gazing into his face. "To make sure the cancer hasn't spread to another area of your body, you might want to see a doctor." Stain growled, "Scram, youngster. You can't get in the way of my work. You're giving first aid, huh? Permit me to help, please." Stain lunged forward as Izuku drew closer, and Izuku blocked the sword with an upturned arm, allowing the chipped blade to sever his appendage cleanly. Izuku put his dismembered hand back in place, wriggled his fingers, and said, "Wow, that is very sharp," as he examined his stump of an arm. Stain thought, an annoying quirk, but whatever. The fight is already over. Stain's eyes widened, and he quickly wiped his tongue on his sleeve as he licked at the red liquid that covered his sword. "Oh no. It has a motor oil flavor. What sort of quirk gives you blood in the form of motor oil? There seem to be tumorous growths on your tongue. Either that or your blood-based paralysis quirk has adapted physiologically. A complete course of chemotherapy is advised after an immediate amputation, according to medical analysis." "This isn't blood," Stain said, wiping the fluid from his blade and rubbing it between his fingers as he stared at the motionless Izuku. "Why aren't you bloody?" "I am unable to comprehend. Does a transfusion require blood?" "Ignore it. I don't need my quirk to accomplish this." "Oh, that's good. Tell me if you require anything." Stain sprang forward with lightning speed, slit Izuku's arms in two, and kicked them far out of reach. "Oh," Izuku said, blinking. "I just discovered that you are a wanted criminal named Stain." If he hadn't had blades in both hands, Stain would have grimaced. "Yes. One last time, I'll say it. Don't get in my way." "Nope." Izuku sprang forward with lightning speed, and Stain just missed his kick before he cut off both of his legs. "Too reckless," Stain replied. "You're no better than the other fakes." Stain was still busy hacking Izuku into smaller but still biting pieces when Todoroki came and froze him whole. Now limbless, Izuku leapt forward with his torso and bit his ankle, crunching through bone. With green hair and green eyes, Shoto Todoroki used a metal wheelbarrow to carry a huge block of ice with Stain frozen inside, while a group of heroes looked on. Izuku said, "Hello everyone," adding, "I am now a wheelbarrow." "Eh, did my taiyaki delivery come early?" Gran Torino asked, waddling forward with a silly expression on his face and jabbing his cane at the Stain ice sculpture. Blinking at the old hero, Shoto said, "This isn't taiyaki." "And I didn't order any of this crap," Gran Torino said, kicking the wheelbarrow in the wheel. "Understood," Izuku replied, reverting back to standard humanoid model. As Izuku chewed his way through the wheelbarrow's chassis, arms, legs, and a torso appeared behind his mouth, and the wheelbarrow developed a mouth and bit into the wheel. "Whatever became of remaining in my line of sight?" As Izuku adjusted his newly formed limbs, Gran Torino moaned. "Were you not always able to see me? As soon as I turned around, you fled, kid. You certainly weren't." "Really?" Even though he wasn't present, All Might assured me that you were aware of everything he did. Since Todoroki possesses both ice and fire quirks, the Nomu at the USJ possesses both regeneration and shock absorption, and the unknown individual flying directly at us possesses both flying and stealth quirks. I assumed that you had some sort of omniscience or far-seeing quirk. A huge black figure swooped down from the night sky, grabbed Izuku, and beat its strong wings before the heroes could react, before they could even comprehend what Izuku had said. At least it made an effort. With all the wind kicked up, Izuku's heels barely lifted off the ground as the Nomu struggled mightily to lift him off the ground with its beating wings. "Are you attempting to embrace me? This is a very ineffective way to give a hug," Izuku said to the terrifying monster. "You haven't put your arms around my shoulders, and you're kicking up too much wind. Should I show you how to properly hug someone?" The Nomu continued to beat its wings while roaring at him. "Great. Start by completely encircling their shoulders with your arms. The Nomu struggled but was unable to free itself from Izuku's iron grip as his arms reached out and encircled it, pinning its wings in place. And then, you firmly hold them. The wings snapped, bones crunched, and the Nomu bowed backwards as Izuku's grip tightened, and the Nomu let out a silent shriek as Izuku squeezed it to pulp. Izuku's arms squeezed down with the droning whine of 1,000 hydraulic presses, and the Nomu wriggled and clawed at Izuku, but the arms never moved. The heroes gathered in a circle gaped at the shattered Nomu as Izuku released his hold. Hug complete, Izuku said. Do you feel a sense of warmth and companionship? The Nomu did not respond. Make the space clear. The EMT put a finger to his nose and felt for the smallest puff of air as he hurried over to the hero student who had just passed out. His breathing has stopped. Someone please get an ambulance over here and prepare a defibrillator. The EMT pinched Izuku's nose and blew a deep breath past Izuku's lips, but Izuku's chest refused to move when he attempted chest compressions. Damn it, take a breath. The EMT yelled as he began beating Izuku's chest with his fists, his hands darkened with bruises. I have it. As they rushed in with a defibrillator, a sidekick yelled. Be quick. There is no pulse in him. The EMT put the pads on Izuku's chest and charged the defibrillator. And it's clear. The LED display flickered and went dark as the machine let out a pathetic whine, pouring all the volts it had stored in its battery through Izuku. Is the battery dead? Why hasn't anyone taken care of these? The EMT cried out. I immediately removed it from the charger, and it indicated that it was charged, the sidekick said. Do you think that's a full battery? An ambulance arrived with sirens blaring, the back door flying open, and a stretcher rolling down the ramp. We have to get him in there yesterday, so hurry up. Despite their best efforts, the medics were unable to get Izuku off the ground, much less place a stretcher underneath him. Don't worry, his weight won't be supported by these stretchers. The Midori Mover 9000 is available. The EMT muttered to himself, why did the inventor have to give it such a dumb name? One at a time please, the padded scissors lift said in a stilted, monotone voice as it trundled out from under the ambulance and placed Izuku on top of itself. That's only one, so move quickly, move, move, move. Why don't people find my jokes funny? As it rolled up the ramp, the elevator inquired. Check his blood pressure, rookie, I'll get the defibrillator fired up, the medic said as they entered the ambulance. The rookie, who was obviously perspiring from the strain, put the inflatable cuff around Izuku's arm and squeezed, squeezed, and squeezed. The medic continued until the cuff finally burst with a loud pop. Stop that. You want to give me a heart attack too? The EMT bellowed. I apologize, sir. 1000 over 1000 is his blood pressure. Are you a moron? That level of blood pressure is impossible? Well, that's what it said. Never mind, just help me with the pads. Izuku's eyes fluttered open as the ambulance sputtered and came to a stop, and the defibrillator, which was directly connected to the car's battery, poured every ounce of energy into Izuku's chest. Battery at 2%, Izuku stated. Please be aware that until I recharge, I will switch to power-saving mode. There will be significant limitations in cognitive abilities. You're in good company then, the elevator operator replied. I've yet to meet a human without a faulty motherboard. Using his blood-stained script, All Might said, Okay class, handing out a stack of papers, today we're having a quiz on the order of priorities in the 7 hero work scenarios, basic field medicine, and villain quirk analysis. You have 3 minutes, hold on, that doesn't sound correct. 30 minutes? How are we going to complete this test in 3 minutes? Kaminari screamed. All Might blanched at the dreaded word, ran for the closest window, but metal shutters crashed over it, and punched as hard as he could, barely piercing the barrier that kept him and all of 1A inside. Oh, are we taking a test? What prevented you from inviting me? Nezu crooned over the intercom. I adore exams. Aizawa-san, for the love of all that is holy, get the tea. All Might hammered on the door. All right, let's start with a question. What worries All Might the most? No, wait, that's a government secret. You can't tell the students that. All Might went pale. That sounds juicy. Tell us, Mina said. That would not be enjoyable, would it? If you're wrong, I'll throw them all over the room. Izuku held up his hand as the class discussed, saying, lawyers. Izuku was seized by the neck by Siro, who uttered, you foolishly doomed us all. Doomed. That's right. How disappointing, Nezu said. I truly wanted to make that happen. What do you know? Still, let's do it. The student desks suddenly flew open, The ceiling tiles slid out of the way, and the entire room was filled with lawyers, all squeezing past each other to get a better look at All Might while flinging cease and desist letters, copyright claims, and property damage invoices. One at a time please, and direct all complaints to my legal department. All right. Let's include reporters. A whole press team rushed cameras and microphones into All Might's face as one wall collapsed, and he felt the room spin around him as he hyperventilated while juggling legal documents and interview questions. With a shout, All Might jumped out of bed, gasping for air as he surveyed his penthouse suite and exhaled. Thank heavens it was only a dream. Good thing no one has been dumb enough to say, test, at school. Nezu was sitting at a desk when the light suddenly came on. Yes, that is unfortunate, isn't it? A good test is something I adore. All Might jumped out from behind the school's teaching podium, glanced around at the room full of worried 1A students, and then looked down at the cold, windy feeling around his legs. An additional dream? At least it could be more unique than the missing pants part, All Might remarked. Well, sir? Have you been getting enough sleep? Given that I'm still dreaming, I should think so. I'll get up before this becomes any more awkward, if that's okay with you. Might pinched himself, but nothing came of it. With her phone out, Yaoyorozu said, I'll order you some pants. Mineta jumped up and down in his chair, his bloodshot eyes focusing more than usual on some parts of female anatomy with a hyena-like hunger. Hey, how are you today? Even I'm getting a little creeped out, Kaminari inquired. Do you know what chapter it is? Mineta asked, grabbing Kaminari by the shirt and drawing him in. Well, aren't we studying history in chapter 12, Hokkaido Cowboys? It's not that. Our current chapter is 69. With a giggle, Kaminari said, nice. Are you even remotely aware of what that means? Oh, no? Why is it significant? With a gesture toward the room, Mineta said, look around. This is a humorous drabble series. Mineta leaned in close and whispered, something sexy's gonna happen today. There's no denying that a 69 joke is inevitable, and that can only mean one thing. Kaminari retreated from Mineta, seemingly concerned that the mutual hatred of the female students could spread. Maybe the author's going to do something wittier than make sexual innuendos for the 69th chapter. Hatsume walked in as the door slammed open, her clothes so badly singed that they appeared to be about to fall off at the first touch, her face blackened by the soot from her most recent explosion, and her face smeared with grease. Hey, Izu-kun. I get to make babies with you today, according to Powerloader Sensei. Kaminari grimaced and said, oh, well, whatever. I'm leaving because I heard enough the last time. Nezu, make me smile. Kaminari was grabbed by his shirt by an arm that emerged from the ceiling. Where are we going to give birth today? Izuku inquired. This very spot. I could fit all our favorite toys in this bad boy, Hatsume said, grabbing a huge toolbox from her cleavage and slapping the top. Mineta drooled and exclaimed, they're serious. Are you comfortable having babies in front of everyone else? Izuku inquired. Give them permission. That way, it will be more enjoyable. They might even have ideas on how to improve the process of having children. That is completely inappropriate and a blatant violation of multiple school policies. Iida yelled as she stood up. I'll have to let our teachers know right away. Juru dragged Iida out the door and said, forget it. Let's just go get lunch. Mineta hurried to the film club's room as the rest of the class dispersed, grabbed every camera and microphone they had, scurried back to class, and pointed every camera at the two. Go wild. Don't mind me, Mineta said. Oh, I had never considered filming our childbearing. Later, that will be a lot of fun to watch. When Hatsume produced power tools, Mineta's excitement gave way to confusion, which then evolved into agony as the power tools were used on a hammer that was powered by a rocket. Mineta sobbed as she left the room and yelled at the sky, why am I unable to experience even one moment of joy? Midnight frowned as she hurried in wearing a Riska copyright black lingerie shortly after Mineta left. Rats, I missed my chance. As he clicked and typed on his computer, Nezu laughed and said, yes, everything's coming together perfectly. No one can stop me now. After choosing the 99.9% off coupon and applying it to his order, Nezu opened his cart and savored the 50 metric tons of tea he had ordered. And now, for the moment of truth. Nezu licked his lips while he waited for the confirmation after clicking buy. To his surprise, an alert stating that his school was short on funds appeared. Whoa, we've already exceeded the budget for this quarter? You'd better invest quickly. A barrel-wielding, unwashed man across the ocean at Wall Street twitched violently and gestured toward the NFT values displayed overhead. It's getting underway. The hermit cried out, The white mouse attacks once more. What's the old fart babbling about, dude? As one investor turned away from the insane man, he muttered. Wall Street was filled with gasps and cries as Red Ape's value surged by $50 million. Investors yelled and clamored as they increased their bids on the non-fungible strip of code, and Bored Ape, Greedy Ape, Grape Ape, and others all soared. Then there was a mad dash for the tellers as investors made increasingly outrageous bids, which caused the price to skyrocket even further. Pride comes before a fall. Icarus flies too close to the sun. The end is upon us, the hermit said, huddled in the corner and gazing with wide eyes at the blinking display of values. As the hermit predicted, Red Ape's value plummeted. Investors watched in horror as their tacky artwork drained their bank accounts, and they hurried to sell their pieces, accepting ever lower prices as the market plummeted like a lead anvil. Once the values hit their lowest point, Dogecoin's value skyrocketed, and investors flocked to profit from the new coin craze. The investors soon ran out of money as the cycle went on, and desperate men traded their three-piece suits and watches for barrels offered by enterprising salesmen outside. Before long, Wall Street was crowded with teary-eyed, barrel-wearing paupers crammed into elevators to the top floor, and as men threw themselves from the highest floors, the building's manager laid out the tarp to catch them all and direct them into low-paying desk jobs at the nearby cubicle farm. Only the hermit was left when the market leveled off, and his cackles reverberated through the deserted hall as he raised his flip phone and exclaimed, "I made $1." The room instantly filled up again. Which NFT did you purchase? The recluse puffed out his chest with pride and said, I purchased a government bond. The hermit was left to enjoy his $1 while the paupers complained and scattered. Nezu stretched and marveled at his refilled funds half a world away. Now that that's resolved, it's time to get some tea. The coupon had expired when he attempted to click the buy button. It's unfortunate. I suppose I ought to invest more. On the eve of Christmas, throughout the United Arab Emirates, all of the teachers had gone on vacation, when there are no adults present to supervise the pupils. And threats of imprisonment if they set the place on fire. Katsuki roasted a ham, and Sato prepared desserts, while their Christmas jam featured Jiro singing carols. After enjoying themselves, they decided to call it a night. Until they were startled by a narrator's voice, anyway. Who's talking at 3 in the morning? Zero said. Bakugo yelled, it doesn't matter, my fist is their only warning. Why are you making rhymes? Ojiro inquired, worried. Zero remarked, I never learned poetry, so I don't know. Okay, that one was forced. Something's amiss. Do you believe it's because it's Christmas today? That's what it is, we're in a holiday special. Mooting, Jiro remarked. I hope it's not a musical. But I don't want to rhyme, Mina exclaimed angrily. Everything sounds like a mess because of it. Well, what are our options? Momo asked out loud. Without a word, the entire class pondered. I have an idea, declared Bakugo. We beat up Deku, since he's to be blamed. How could that be? That's not his quirk. Momo said, no wait, but there's a way that might work. Santa is the reason Christmas exists. We can stop this rhyme if we can locate him. However, he's all over the map, Kaminari said. That's easy, I know who can make this a snap. Everyone hurried to the UA support lab. Hatsume created machines there while welding furiously. Momo said, pardon me, but we have to find Saint Nick. You've arrived at the ideal location. I am aware of what will work. First, though, I'll need to borrow Midoriya, so we can make babies that'll find Santa for ya. She pulled him into the adjacent room, and, as everyone sought cover, slammed the door shut. They heard bangs of a different kind instead of explosions. One that conjured up images of filth. Hatsume groaned. Oh, Izuku, push harder. Their work table groaningly buckled. You do realize that they're not actually doing what we believe they're doing? No way, this story's PG-13, it's a joke all right. Mineta walked confidently to the door of the workshop, and looked into a crevice beside the floor. Hey, Eijiro yelled, dude, that's really bad. You idiot, what if they see you staring? Mineta exclaimed, I refuse to live a life of doubt. Better to have lived a man than a coward died. The door flew open as he knelt down, hurling Mineta into a distant snowbank. My baby is finished. Its design is amazing. I have no doubt this will find Santa. Izuku's nose was glowing a vivid shade of cherry red, and gestured toward Santa's sled in the sky. His sleigh is too high for us to catch him. I have a private jet, Momo said. How about we take a flight? Alfred drove right there after she called him. lifting the entire class into the sky. Izuku clung to the aircraft as it lifted, and his glowing nose illuminated the path ahead. What should we do now? Shall we simply leap? Or perhaps we could give him a light bump to ground him? Alfred pushed a red button and laughed. The red glutton was tracked by missiles that locked on. Nevertheless, an anti-missile flare emerged from the sleigh. The missiles began to spiral through the air as a result. We are out of spare missiles, oh dear. How are we going to remove Santa from the air now? Izuku shrank to a bomb-sized size, and with great skill, he launched himself into the air. With a loud crash, he collided with Santa's sleigh. Santa's reins were burned to a heap of ash. The snow struck Santa's sleigh, which had no means of flight. There is nowhere else for Father Christmas to go. What are you looking for? Santa, keeping his sack safe, asked. I gave you all presents, and I can take them back. We want this rhyming night to end. We find it annoying because it occurs frequently. You've got the wrong man. There's nothing I can do. If it weren't the author's directive, I would also cease rhyming. Bakugo proposed. Well, let's beat Santa up anyways. And see if that ends this rhyming as requested. Thus, Santa received a severe beating from the class of 1A. And left the poor person who gave the gift bleeding and bruised. Has our rhyming curse been lifted? I believe we've finally prevailed, so it should be. Gosh! Katsuki cursed. We're still rhyming. This time, is there anything else we could try? Ojiro recalled. Santa mentioned an author. What if we dismantle the fourth wall? We just did, but he hasn't appeared since. Do we need anything in order to locate him? Santa's sleigh is magical, so let's give it a try. It may contain something that could break through the fourth wall. Izuku extracted a hammer from inside, and pounded away with a terrible noise. However, since I am the author, I say as follows. That was my nose, so they could Navera. Now pay attention, you fanfiction writer. I'll beat you until you're black if you don't stop rhyming. Katsuki, I wish I could, but I have to write first. I made this as a Christmas present for my readers. And isn't that the main focus of this season? Spreading the spirit of Christmas everywhere? Thus, the 1A class, brimming with holiday spirit. They went off to their dorms, and a no, don't approach. I need that for my books, not my face. If it weren't for my attractiveness, who would read this? I believe he stopped talking. Is this story over? At last. Let's go home and enjoy ourselves some more. You do realize that was a joke? I promise it wasn't me? Well, who could it have been if it wasn't you? Guys, I think we might have wrecked the story forever. Will we continue to be trapped in December? Is that really going to be that bad? After all, it is Christmas. It's preferable to be stranded during the holidays than in the fall. You know what, perhaps this whole situation is rather pleasant. We had to beat people up twice, yes. Consequently, the 1A class chose to admit that they ultimately discovered their holiday spirit. No, hold on, let's hit him some more, he's still talking. I can't stand this any longer, so I'm done. I am aware that you do not receive holiday pay, Cementoss. In any case, I don't pay any of you. Let's put an end to this tale and fix this wall. Prior to my history being made by the class of 1A. Let's get this class back to their beds first, though. And clear their minds of any memory of this night. As I say goodbye to everyone without breaking the fourth wall. I hope you all have a very happy Christmas. Sitting in hospital beds with Iida and Todoroki, Izuku's heart monitor emitted a long, sorrowful tone. Pardon me, miss. But is there a way to silence the malfunctioning heart monitor? Iida yelled at the nurse. It is really annoying and makes it hard to fall asleep. Oh, that's not a problem. Midoriya-san isn't alive. Naturally, the head physician has us keep an eye on his heart until we discover a beat. The doctor has 10,000 yen on us finding a beat before he leaves, the nurse said with a smile. The door was knocked on. Oh, talk about the devil. Keep in mind that Mama has 3 bottles of vodka riding on that wager, Midoriya-san. Not a heartbeat. The doctor entered with a clipboard and said, How are you feeling, Midoriya-san? I appreciate you asking, and I feel great as usual. All right. Unfortunately, your insurance did not process, so this is the medical bill. Izuku accepted the provided clipboard and gazed at it. Is credit acceptable, or would you prefer that as a check? You're not freaking out? The doctor asked, blinking. Is there any justification for me to be? It looks like this transaction is in order. I gave you a band-aid for 30,000 yen. Why don't you freak out? Here you are. Izuku printed a check out of his mouth. Calm down, kid, This isn't the United States, the doctor said, tearing it up. I'll have to try something else, the doctor muttered, adding that it was a joke. Chief of Police Tsuragame entered the room as the doctor was leaving. I regret to notify the three of you that you will be regrettably arrested for vigilantism, woof, until you leave this hospital room. Giving Endeavor the credit is not possible because the paparazzi obtained pictures of you wheeling Stain out in a block of ice. I had hoped to tie this up by attributing Stain's capture to another hero. Who are you calling? Tsuragame asked as Izuku nodded and pulled out his phone. My mom's lawyers. A delivery man knocked on Izuku's door as the phone rang, holding out a suitcase and saying, "Sign here." After Izuku signed, a lawyer emerged as the suitcase clicked open. My client was acting under Gran Torino's supervision. He explicitly disobeyed Gran Torino's orders by leaving his site. I never left his site. Gran Torino emerged from the trash can. You did it, brat. Why did you flee? All Might said you could see anything, even if you were not in the room. All Might's cries of fear reverberated from half a city away as Gran Torino scowled and said, "One moment." He then leapt back into the trash can. In any event, the chief of police stated, "We cannot." The doctor, wearing a purple mask and screaming "Ooga booga," rushed in as the door opened again, and Tsuragame quickly took out his pistol and shot him 3 times. The police chief exclaimed, "Woofs," as the entire room, including the doctor, gaped at him. I didn't realize this wasn't the US.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, bye bye.